Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome to Solo Game Day here at Heavy Cardboard. Teach, play, and discuss medium heavy strategy board games, war games, 18xx. I'm your host today, at least, Edward Euler. Happy to be joined by y'all. Solo playthrough of the solo game, which is Comancheria. And I believe the designer, Joel Toppen, pronounces that differently, so it's probably on me. I apologize. To anybody out there that speaks, reads, or understands Comanche. So Comancheria, the rise and fall of the Comanche Empire, designed by Joel Toppen and published by GMT Games. Now, welcome everybody watching live around the world, as well as after the fact. Before we get started, a number of things as I want to do. First and foremost, if you guys and gals and folks out there do enjoy the stream, consider liking, subscribing, support the show over on patreon.com/HCHQ. Also, I would like to point out that Joel Toppen himself has done an amazing series of videos that basically walks through the entire playbook that the game comes with. It's over the course of about 4.5, 5 hours. He's broken it up into 20 to 35-minute videos. It's a 9-part series that I found invaluable, and actually I use that to help me go through the playbook to learn this. Now, I've gone through the playbook twice. This will be my first true playthrough of the game, but I feel pretty confident that I'm going to be able to walk y'all through this as well as a single playthrough, as well as be able to clarify some things where might not be clear in the playbook, but when you see them in practice, much like what Joel did in his videos, I think is going to help everybody out there. Now, this is not going to be a you should do this strategy-wise. Nope, not what today is about. Today is getting through the initial scenario for the game, which we'll go over that a bit here in detail as we go along. And I am not going to do a full front-end rules teach. If I did that, then that's the only thing we would be doing today. There is a lot going on. However, everything is extraordinarily procedural. And what I mean by that, I don't mean that as a slight. What I mean by that is if you take your time, you go through the player aids and you use the player aids to walk yourself through these, along with either today's video or Joel's video or a series of videos, I think everybody's going to get a chance to get a really good feel for what this game is about. All right, so without further ado, excuse me, I'm not 100% today, so I apologize, but definitely wanted to get this out there for everybody out there. So I don't know if Joel's going to be joining us. It'd be cool if he did. I don't know, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah, if you're watching this live, obviously feel free to ask questions. I will be stepping through everything, especially the first couple rounds, very slowly. This is going to be a long stream. There's just no way around that, so get comfy. And yeah, I think that's it. So. Let's get started, shall we? And thanks, everybody, for hanging out. So, yeah. And Jess, if you're watching, thank you. All right. All right, so let's go ahead. Here is most everything. So we're gonna read a bit of the theme and setting here to be able to get started. Comancheria, again, my pronunciations are going to be horrible today, so I apologize. No disrespect to anybody out there, just not my native language. Comancheria is a solitaire game in which you, the player, command the key cultural and political decisions of the Comanche people from the time they moved out onto the southern plains until their climactic showdown with the U.S. Army in the 1875 Red River War. The game is divided into 4 historical periods: 1700 to 1749, that's what we're going to be doing today, 1750 to 1799, 1800 to 1849, and finally 1850 to 1875. Along the way, you will encounter other tribes and colonial powers such as Spain, Mexico, the United States, and Texas, most of whom will try to push you from your lands. Each historical period has a victory check objective. At the end of each historical period, the player must have achieved the historical period's victory check objective, or the game ends in the player's defeat. During each historical period, the player must strive not only to meet that period's victory check objective, but also keep military and cultural points from being depleted. If the player has 0 military and 0 culture points, the game ends immediately in the player's defeat. Now, there's a cultural note here that I thought was really good. Known by some as the Lords of the Southern Plains, the Comanche call themselves Numenu, I think. This word is to the Comanche what the Diné is to the Navajo. It means the people. So we being me and the herd, y'all out there, the peanut gallery, we are going to represent the people, i.e. the Comanche. So there we go. All right. All right. So I'm going to keep the rule book handy because I imagine we're going to be using that at some point throughout the game. All right. So a couple of things. First off, I feel like we should go over what the historical period that we're going to be playing. We're going to be playing the 1700 to 1749, which is pretty much what the playbook actually lays out. Now, we are not going to step through the playbook. Joel has done an amazing job of doing that. We're going to make our own mistakes and go through this as we go on. But what I mean by that is our historical period is going to be from 1700 to 1749, and that's it. We're not going to be transitioning to multiple historical periods. I'm not competent enough to do that. It's already going to be a long stream, and maybe down the road, if my partner and I think it's a good idea to stream this again in the future, and if y'all would enjoy us doing that, then that is something that we may do in the future. But as it is, we are doing the quote-unquote onto the plains scenario from 1700 to 1749 in the rulebook. That is 9.2 for those that are interested. All right. Now, a couple of things before we get started. Obviously, cup. This is what I'm going to use to roll dice. Those are not part of the game. Also, this little player aid over here is available. It's, I think, the player aid for Dad that I actually printed out and taped to the board. The reason for that is if you are anything like me, it's going to be very easy to get distracted or lose your spot on where you are in various procedures. Because as Joel says, there are nested procedures within procedures and sometimes nested procedures within nested procedures within a series of procedures. What I'm trying to say is it's easy to lose your spot. Okay, when I'm done with this, where was I? So this little player aid that I have printed out and taped temporarily onto the board, and I have a little black cube that's not included with the game, is going to mark where we are in a certain thing. Now, I may forget to use that, but that's what that's going to be there for. That is obviously not part of the board itself, all right? Everything else is pretty much as it is. So what is it y'all are looking at out here on the board? Well, the first thing is this area of the U.S. represents Oklahoma, Texas, down the Rio Grande. So we're talking around northern Mexico over here, as far east, I believe, as Louisiana over here. So it's kind of, this is the area of the Comanche Empire from 1700 to 1875, I believe. I am not super well versed in the history of this outside of the game today. All right. So the map, this is going to be a point-to-point movement. So we are going to be moving along these lines, sometimes moving along dotted lines. The various enemy that we're going to be facing, we have a northern, an eastern, a southern, and a western enemy. They are going to be moving along whenever they have war groups that come out, they will be traveling along their color paths, so on and so forth. So that's what these various connections and lines are between those areas. There are enemy home spaces, which are going to be these square spaces. The game starts in our scenario with the northern enemy, the western enemy, which happens to be the Spanish, the southern enemy, which also happens to be Spanish, and then no eastern enemy, which I'll be honest, this is just a blank blue chit. Don't have to, you can leave it empty, but I just thought for symmetry, I would put that over there. In these spaces, there are a number of things, okay? There is our starting rancheria, which is kind of our, kind of a home space for us, is going to be up here in the upper Arkansas area. Now, within each of these, within the map itself, I should say, there are 6 different regions. You'll notice that there is the upper Kansas up here, which is represented by the one-sided die, okay? Then we have the lower Arkansas. Did I say upper Arkansas? Did I? I hope not. Upper Arkansas, the lower Arkansas, which is this blue area over here, the 2. Then there is the Llano Estacado, which is the red area here, which is represented by the 3. Then there is the Red River, which is the orange area here, which is represented by the 4. The Brazos, Colorado, is 5, the brown area down here, and finally the Rio Grande, which is this green and the area represented by the 6. Now, each of those areas is then further differentiated by the space number, and those are 1 to 6 as well. So you'll notice up here in the upper Arkansas, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which are the numbers inside the various, I think they're called TPs, spaces on there. All right, so now that we have talked about those, in addition to that, there is the enemy instruction display down in this area over here. This is going to be, for lack of a better way to word it, this is going to be the AI and how that's going to work. We're going to be rolling dice to talk about specific groups, so whether it's going to be the north, the well, not the east as it were in our scenario, but the north, the south, the west is going to have to do with our history card, and then further, it's going to be, we're going to roll dice again to be able to run the AI, or have the game run itself, if you will, okay? And we'll walk through all of that steps down there. All right, we have our available resources and our out of play area. Now, these are kind of a synonymous, this is kind of a one big area, for lack of a better way to put it. So our resources, horses, guns, food, trade goods, our bands, i.e. the our Comanche bands, so our troops and our peoples over here are going to be over here. Now, technically, per the rules, the bands are supposed to be over here in the out of play area, but things are a little bit of a tight fit. We have ravaged markers over here. We have settlements. There's a bunch of settlements. A lot of them are going to be off screen, but those are going to be represented by those right there. There are other markers that may come into play for the enemy instruction display. Then there are enemy units that may come into play as well. Then, out here on the board already, there are tribes. Now, you know these are tribes because on the backside they say tribes on them, all right? There are a bunch of preceded, per the scenario, tribes already out here. So, for instance, talking about the upper Arkansas, we have 2 tribes. They start in upper Arkansas 4 and 5 respectively. Then, all of the spaces that don't have tribes already in them get filled by bison. Bison are going to be one of the available resources that we're going to be able to take advantage of throughout the game as well. There is also the Pelodoro Canyon, which is just outside of Amarillo, Texas, where I used to live and work. This is kind of a, how do we say it? Kind of a hidden safe space, okay, for whenever we need a breather. It's probably not going to come into play in today's playthrough, but when you play the longer campaigns, this is going to be invisible to the enemy. However, it is important to point out that this area does not constitute a territory, okay? So when we talk about territory for win game conditions, you cannot have a rancheria here and have it count as a territory. Territories being these spaces out here, okay? Then over here we have an operation track, which is going to be, think of this as the big picture timer of the game, Okay, so up here, and we have a few markers over here. We have the passage of time, which is going to be a massive step throughout the game. Then the operations marker there, which both of those start in the start space up there. We have a war marker up here that is going to start out here. But after we do the first passage of time series of steps, and I'm going to need y'all to help me remember this, this marker needs to go into the success pool to be able to possibly be randomly drawn out. Hopefully not, but possibly needs to be dumped in there. All right, then there is the general record track. And this is going to be tracking our action points, the enemy or the AI action points. So our action points, the enemy action points, movement points for bands as we actually go through and step through everything. And also our culture points and our military points. I point this out because these two things are going to be super important to maintain throughout the game, because one of the losing conditions is if both of these, the moment they both reach 0, it is a catastrophic loss and we have shamed ourselves and we have done horribly. All right. What else is out here? We have the development deck. Now, the development deck, there are 4 different decks for the 4 different historical periods. Obviously, we're only playing one period, so we're only going to have development deck number 1. And in the bottom right of each of those cards, there are numbers. It just so happens that per the setup, we have cards 1, 2, and 3 out. The rest of those have been shuffled up. All right. There is going to be a space for a war event. We'll cover that much later as we actually play the game. We have our history card, and I do think it would be important to go over our history card a little bit. Here, our history card is going to set up and kind of run the basic part or the big picture stuff of the AI. So whenever we have to do rolls for enemy actions, they're going to be here. So it's going to be the north, the west, and the south. And you'll notice that technically the east isn't even listed. So what does that mean? I could have left the blue chits off of the board, but just for completion's sake, I went ahead and put them out there. All right. It also says, while in play, which is going to be for the entire part of the game for us, these rules are going to come into play. And then our victory check objective, i.e. what's the goal of our game, is going to be listed there. I'm not going to go over that quite yet right now. And finally, the last thing that I think we should at least briefly go over is our Rancheria display. Now, Rancherias are kind of like groups of Comanche. So these are going to be, they're going to have groups or bands of Comanche over here. And within that, they are going to have, and I'm going to probably butcher this, I apologize, but they are going to have Mahimianas and Paraibos, I believe is how you say it, I think. These are going to be the leaders of this band or this group, this Rancheria. Each Rancheria is going to be represented out here on the board by one of these markers. There can be up to 5. Realistically today, there's only going to be at most 2 for us because that's going to be one of the goals of our game. So Rancheria A and Rancheria B are going to be the ones probably in play. And then as you play more deeper into the game, more historical ages or eras, then there will be more and more Rancherias that come into play. But as it is, the Rancheria A, so this space right here, all of this applies and is said to be in that space. If you're familiar with a coin game and you have those kind of boxes for certain cities and stuff like that, so all of this is going to be in there in that space, if that makes sense. All right? There are 2 leaders within that, and I feel like I probably ought to zoom in a little bit on this, and I feel like I'm getting a little in detail for right now, but so be it. Mahimianas and Paraibo. Paraibo, these are kind of the, think of them as the peacetime leaders of the tribe. And I don't know if I'm using the terminology correct, but of the group of the Rancheria. That's what this is going to represent. The Mahimiana here is going to be kind of the wartime leader of the tribe as well. And the Mahimiana can go out and help support bands, which are going to be these markers over there, when they go out to take various actions. And we start the game with 4 horses as resources in our supply as well. All right, I think that's a good enough overview of the components and everything like that, okay? However, now I need to talk about how we play the game. The other thing that I should point out is there are also culture cards over here. So let me go ahead and bring you all over there and show you all that, okay? All right, so the culture cards. Now, these are not randomly distributed. You'll notice that they say, all of them say level 1 on the top, except for the horsemanship one, because we start with one of these cards. We could have started with any of the level 1s, but I went ahead and did the same as what is in the playbook. So we start with one of these in play. So the important thing to note on the culture cards is as we acquire these, you must have a level 1 before you can get a level 2 of that level. So, in other words, here for tactics, I cannot get a level 2 or a level 3 until I have the level 1. I cannot get the level 3 until I have level 1 and level 2, etc., etc. These are going to be powerful rule breakers for us as we go along, and except the exception to that is diplomacy level 1. You'll see the effect is none, but you have to have it to be able to get diplomacy level 2, which is going to be powerful, yada, yada, yada. All right. There's also the war deck here, but we'll get into that as we go along. All right. Okay. So before I talk about what the goal of the game is for our scenario, that's all I'm going to talk about for today. I feel like one thing, the thing that I should do is go over the sequence of play. So let me go ahead and use that little handy dandy little dad player aid. Again, available over on BGG. I realize it's sideways to us, but the sequence of play starts out in the first turn or the first round, call it the first turn. We actually start in the player operations. So normally, a regular turn, the sequence of play will go a war column phase. Each of that phase will be broken down into various steps. Then after that, there's going to be player operations. Then after player operations, there's going to be a cleanup phase. Rinse and repeat these until the end game condition has been met. Or the end game condition has been failed, or the culture and military points reach 0. If that happens, we automatically lose, okay? Now, obviously, there are a ton of steps within each of these, a lot of times, and there are a lot of various actions that we can take. But big picture, that's the series of how things go. So we're going to start with the player operations, meaning us. The game is going to react to us for the early part of this game, and then the deeper into the game you go, the more that kind of transitions from you dictating to the game doing stuff and dictating to you, because it gets harder and harder for the Comanche as time goes on, historically, which is what happened. Okay? All right? Okay. All right. So now, let's go ahead and talk about what the goal of the game actually is for us today. The goal of the game, the victory check objective, which I'll talk about when we get there, is the player must control the Upper Arkansas, the entire region, okay, as it says. You know what? Better yet, instead of that, how about we do this? I think that might be better. There we go. So in our scenario, the player must control the Upper Arkansas region and have a rancheria in a second territory. Okay, so what do these things mean? Well, the Upper Arkansas is going to be these 6 spaces that I pointed out, the purple spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We must control those spaces. What does that mean? It means there must be no enemy controlled spaces out there. Enemy controlled spaces are tribes. So these markers out here, and I suppose we could go ahead and zoom in a little bit on this so y'all can see that. All right, these tribes, so if you wanted the less pretty side that says tribe on them, Those are currently enemy-controlled spaces, all right? If they become allies, they are no longer enemy-controlled, and those are good. Or if those spaces are removed. If they are not, bison are obviously not enemy-controlled, so that's fine. The bison can roam. We need to control all 6 of those spaces. We don't have to have anything in them, per se. We just need them devoid of bad guys. We need that. And we need a second Rancheria, i.e. Rancheria B being right here, needs to be out there in a second territory. So say one of these spaces, maybe. Or one of these spaces, maybe. Okay? All right. So that is our goal. However, that is not checked until we do what's called a passage of time, potentially. Passage of time will happen when the operations marker has reached either down here in the must-do passage of time space, or it reaches one of these spaces and we have to do a roll, and then we roll a certain number, and then we do a passage of time. Passage of time is 15 steps. Other way. There we go. It's 15 steps in the passage of time. One of which, potentially, is check, see if we have to check the victory condition. When you check the victory condition, you either win or lose. Okay? All right. So, all right. All right. So, let's go over this a little bit more in detail. The war column phase, we're not going to even talk about that until we get to that. That's going to be a fair bit into the way. All right. Plus, we don't start with the war column phase. Instead, we start with player operations. Okay. The player operations are going to allow us to do one of 4 options. We can either take actions. We can do culture, which is going to potentially increase our culture because, again, having culture down at 0 is one of the ways, is most of the way how we're going to lose the game potentially. We may do planning, which is going to be really good, but also penalize us in a sense that we are going to lose some of our troops or our bands. Or the final thing we can do is passage of time if we are instructed to do passage of time. So we're going to do that. And then after that, we're going to do what's called an operation cleanup phase. So it just doesn't have the word operation, but the cleanup phase. The cleanup phase is going to be a series of potentially 4 steps. In our game today, it's actually going to be 3 steps. I'm pretty sure that, yeah, it's just going to be 3 steps. All right. The if Santa Fe card step is not going to come into play for us today because of the scenario that we're playing. Okay. On a given turn, whenever we are in the player operations, we can choose to do, theoretically, any of these 4, but realistically, any of those 3. Take actions, culture, or planning. The majority of the time, we are going to be doing the take actions operation. Within that take actions operation, there are going to be 4 actions that we can take. We can hunt, i.e. try and acquire bison out here to be able to get them as a resource. We can move, so our bands out here will go out and do things for us, one of which is going to be hunting these bison. A third is to raid. Raid is going to be on these tribes out here to get resources from them, as well as potentially remove them from the board, which again is going to be, remember, one of the goals or one of the things that we're going to need to do to be able to win the game. And finally, the last option that we can do is trade. We can trade with allies whenever these become allies out here, or any of these others that are out here, trade with them to be able to get more resources over here, which are going to then allow us to, say, do all important re-rolls and stuff like that to get these resources out there. So, that's a lot of stuff. I realize that I'm unloading without actually seeing any of this in action. But the last thing that I want to go over before 2 things that I want to go over before we get started are the development cards that are actually in play whenever they are up here at the top of the board and face up. Those are going to be the ones that are in play, as well as our chosen culture card that we chose to begin the game. So let's go ahead and start with the development cards because those potentially can impact things on our decisions even when we first get started. Okay? All right. Have a good one, Liz. All right. So the development cards that are in play over here are the Apache War, as you can see, the Ute Alliance, and the War of Spanish Succession. Now, you'll see that it says while in play, meaning, as you can see here, it says it's in play. So while it's in play, you'll notice looking at the Apache War one, and we'll just do like this here, that says while in play. After completing a player action, if there are 3 or more ravage counters on a tribe, remove that tribe from play and then return the ravage counters to stock. So that's good. So if one of the ways we're going to be able to remove tribes, which we want to do to be able to get the hard part of our win condition, is to get 3 or more ravage counters on a tribe. So that's important to make note of, okay? Now, obviously, everything in italics is going to be flavor text, all right? All right. So we're going to go over the Ute Alliance. We're going to skip it, I mean. And instead, we're going to move on to the War of Spanish Succession here. Because the war in Europe extends chaos to the New World, this is going to impact things early on here in the game. So it says, while in play, the war and subjugate instructions have no effect. So what that means is over here, and we'll go over this as we go on, anytime we are supposed to do either a war or a subjugate instruction, we are going to just completely ignore that, okay? Enemy spends the action points but does not actually execute the instructions procedure unless that procedure would cause the player to execute a recover instruction, which then means we're going to do a recover instruction instead. Okay, so we just need to kind of commit those to memory. This just in, I kind of have them committed to memory, so I'll take care of the heavy lifting for us on that. Cool. All right. Now, the Ute Alliance card, you'll see that it says spend 1 action point to take it into hand. This is not something you can just do willy-nilly. There's going to be a step in one of the procedures during the passage of time, and I believe there is one other time in which we may be able to take it into our hand. Okay? And then once it is in our hand, then you can see that we have 2 options. To play it from our hand, to place 1 3 strength band onto any map space. That's probably not going to be the main reason we're going to use this card. Instead, we're going to roll a die. On a 1 or a 2, boo, no effect. On a 3 to 6, remove a tribe or settlement counter from play. Does not end peace. What does this mean? Remember, one of the endgame conditions is we have to control this area up here. There are 2 tribes up here. Well, we know if we get 3 or more ravage markers on one of them, that will take care of that. And the other is if we can get this card into our hand and then at any point on our turn when we wish, or pretty much any time except during a passage of time, we can just discard this card and then roll, and hopefully roll a 66.6% chance to roll successfully and then just remove one of those. And hey, if both of those things have happened, we now control an area. We control that territory. And that's the hard part of that. The second thing is going to be putting a second range area out, and then we get into a victory condition check when that arrives. So those are the cards that are in play for us currently. The horsemanship card is a culture card. We start with one of these. I have chosen this not at random. I just chose the one that is already out there in the playbook. So horsemanship, obviously it's a level 1 card. It doesn't cost us anything at the beginning of the game. There's no prerequisite, meaning you don't need a level 1 before you get a level. There's nothing like that here. But the effect says a +1 battle dice roll modifier for Comanche bands in possession of a horse's counter. This is not going to come into play until we have battles. But when we battle, that +1 can be really important. So just know that we have a culture card. Culture cards are always in play, except in one condition. You must have that number of culture points or higher for this to be active. If ever we drop below whatever that number is, in our case 1, so if we have 0 culture points, what's going to happen is we're just going to turn that, we're just going to tap it sideways, and this is no longer active until we get back to at least that number. When it gets back to that number, it's now back in play. That would be true for any number of culture cards that we have at our disposal. Okay? All right. Whew. So that's everything. Just get started. And as Paul points out, always need to be careful holding cards. Whenever you have cards in your hand, I'm going to actually put them over here, separate them from played cards, because there is one of these cards in that deck, I think of 24 cards, that says when it comes into play, you discard all cards in your hand. Not cards that have been played out here in your tableau, but anything in your hand, which means if you still have that Youth Alliance card in your hand, bad news. Should have played it. All right. Okay. All right. All right. So let's get started. All right. Over under on Glory to Rome's 3.5. Who are you going to pull for? The Comanche, which is collectively us, or do you root for not us? So that would be everybody that's against the Comanche, which would be, in our case, the Spanish, the northern other tribes. Yeah, in our scenario, that's who that would be. Okay? All right. Okay. Now, for the first couple of rounds, or first couple of turns, I should say, I am going to follow step by step all of the various things, because this isn't so much about me winning and trying to impart strategy. This is about me being able to walk you all through this so you see that, oh, hey, this is going to be a good game for me, or maybe it won't be. It's very procedural, but there are a lot of tough decisions in this game. So without further ado, one more ado, I guess. The sequence of play here steps things through very well. Our actions are listed very well here. Whenever we have to do success checks there. This player aid is an excellent, excellent source of things. Whenever we choose to do the take actions, which is what we're going to be doing here at the beginning, we're going to go through these steps here. Whenever we take the culture action, we do that. Whenever we do the planning action, that is going to be the planning operation, we will do that. The passage of time is all of that stuff. Looks like a lot, and it is, but again, if you follow the steps, it's really not that bad. Victory check. Did you win? And here, these are the enemy instructions. This is going to be for this stuff over there. Now, then, when we get to the operational cleanup phase, the operational cleanup phase is actually this here. But then within this step, there may be other ones that we're going to be doing here. And then battles are going to be covered in that. And finally, you have resource counter information, like what do these resources get me? Why do I care about them? And information about the counters here. But I'll be honest, once you've gone through this here today, you're never going to need this part of this, at least. And this you may have to reference very briefly, but these are excellent player aids. I highly, highly recommend them. And also, I do highly recommend using this and a little cube or some sort of marker, because I think that's going to be very, very useful for everybody. Okay? All right. All right. All right. Thank you, Liz. Beyond Solitaire in the house. And I have to say thank you to Martin, who actually gave me this. And thank you, Martin, for that. All right. Okay. Whew. I'm nervous. I'm not going to lie. I want to do this game, give it the respect that it deserves, because I think it's a very, very well done and very well designed system. And I think y'all are going to enjoy it, provided you like procedural war game type things like this. And I'll be honest, I do. Okay. Let's get to it. All right, so we're going to start with the take actions. Operation, we're going to choose to do that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk us through the take action step. I'm not going to zoom in on this. I'm just going to read through it and do it as we go. Be patient, get comfy. It's going to be long, but I think it'll be worth it for anybody that's here that enjoys this type of thing, all right? All right, enough preambling and prefacing, so let's get to it. All right, step one, choose a rancheria to activate. Hey, this just in, I choose A. Why? It's the only one that's in play. B, C, D, and E are all out of play right now. They're not out here on the board, so ergo, I choose that one. Excellent. Flip all bands in activated rancheria to their unfinished side. Okay, well, at the beginning of the game, they're already on their unfinished side. Unfinished means they haven't been finished building. It means they haven't taken their turn, or they haven't taken an action and done things. That would be F for finished. But they are already on their unfinished side. Okay, good enough on that. Place bands from the resources box here, okay, into empty spaces immediately to the left of the Parebo's counter on the active rancheria's medicine track. All right, so the Parebo track right here for that rancheria, it starts at 2. Both of the medicine track markers start at 2, but it specifically says you must place bands. These are going to be bands of troops, think of it that way, of Comanche warriors, all right? Those are you must place them in the spots over here to the left on the Parebo track. Now, if the medicine marker was actually at 1, and we have 2 of these, we would put 1 on the 0 space there. The other one would just hang out there because there's not enough space in which to be able to place it. But as it is, there are spots, so we will put them there. Now, it obviously does not matter which one we put where because they are identical. However, as the game goes along, we may have other bands out there. And those are the 3 types of bands. The number on the left is the strength of the band, and the number on the right is going to be the movement points, which movement points are going to be, think of them sort of as action points, but they're also action points, and I don't want to confuse those things. So the number on the right are movement points, which are going to allow us to take certain actions, but those are the movement points. The number on the left is the strength. So when you have when you have different strengths, so the 1, 2s, or 3s, then it will matter which one you put where. These will always activate right to left. So we will start with this one and then go to this one. So you may want to activate the 3 first or the 1 first if you have different values out there. But as it is, we don't have different values. So in our case, it just don't matter. All right. You must place as many bands as possible. If no rancheria is in play or no bands in any rancherias outside the reservation is this space here. Won't come into play in our scenario, so just ignore that. Okay, all right. All right, so that's step 1. Okay, so put bands there, fill up spots. Okay, easy enough. Step 2, activate the rightmost band from the medicine track, and then conduct actions with the active band and must activate at least 1 band this step. Okay, so let me unpack that a little bit. We have to activate the rightmost band from the medicine track, which is going to be this one. Activate means we're going to physically take it from this track and move it out here onto the game board where the rancheria space is. In addition to that, we are going to give it some number, if we wish to, some number of resources. And let me go ahead and walk through the steps in this, okay? We're going to remove the band from the medicine track and then put it out there on the space. So we will take this one and we will put it out here, oops, into that space. That's step 1, okay? And that's free. That doesn't cost any of our movement points, okay? In addition to that, it can take possession of any number of unpossessed, and it doesn't mean like possessed like a demon. What it means is any of these resources that are over here in this resource box. It cannot take possession of other bands that are unused, so a band can't control a band, as it were. But it can control any horses, or if I had guns or food or trade goods or captives, those are all resources. Those can go underneath to form a stack in that band to show that that band now possesses those things. So in other words, it physically it's taking it from the rancheria here, and then as it goes out, it's going to bring it with it, is a good way to put it, okay? There is no limit to the amount of those things that it chooses that it can possess. Unpossessed means if there is a band over here that has stuff already underneath it, you can't take that stuff because that band possesses it. I hope that makes sense. Okay? All right? In addition to that, the activated band is that band right there, right? May, if it wishes, take possession of a Mahimiana. Okay? That is, again, that rancheria's leader, I think, wartime leader. I'm scared to use the word chief because I don't know if that's technically correct, but can take possession of that to where it's going to be a part of that stack or that army, I think is another way to put it. Okay? Okay. It may do so to do that. Does that make sense? I hope. Okay? All right. So with that, now would probably be a good time to talk about why horses matter. Why do we want to take horses? Well, horses give whatever band that possesses them, it gives them the ability to trade them for other resources. That's going to be whenever we're looking to do a trade action. And with allies, we don't have any allies to start with, so we're not worried about that right now. However, they also are going to help with mobility because you can go further and faster and it uses less movement points to move because you're on horseback. Kind of makes sense, right? So I think, and I want to make sure I get this right, 5, let me get through. I'm going to work a little bit backwards. We are going to go ahead and take some number of horses, and we are going to take the Mahimiana with, I believe. But I'm going to retroactively grab them because I want to walk through the movement points for certain actions, and then we'll see how many horses we should have taken, and that's how many we will have taken, if that makes sense. Okay? All right. And fair point, Paul, you can trade with enemy square locations. Here, we're not going to be doing that anytime soon, or at least not right away. All right. So, we've activated the rightmost band from the medicine track. Now, the player may, so now we're going to take actions. There are 4 actions that we can take. We can hunt if there is a bison in the location where we are. Well, there obviously is no bison up here, and I think now would be a good time to zoom in on that. So we're not going to bother hunting. We're not going to raid because we're not in the location where we're not going to raid ourselves. We can't. And we can't trade with ourselves. So that leaves exactly one option. That one option is to move. Now the cost is 1 movement point per space for a band with at least 1 horse, or it's 2 movement points per space if you don't have horses. How many movement points do we have? We have, there we go. We have 5. So, we have 5 movement points. We're going to bring our movement point marker up here. We're at 5 to be able to begin with. We are going to take at least 1 horse with us. We know this. So I'm going to go ahead and stack the horse underneath there. So now all of our movement is going to be 1 space. All right? I'm good with that. So we will go ahead and move 1 to here. That's going to cost us 1 movement point. And you know what? At this point, we have 4 movement points left. I think we'll go ahead and hunt. Okay? So hunting, it costs 2 movement points if the band possesses the Mahimiana, i.e. that chit. It will cost 2 movement points to go ahead and claim that bison. Hunting is always successful, provided you have the movement points to do so. Otherwise, it costs 3 movement points. Okay? So that is an option. However, I don't think we're going to do that. So instead, we're not going to hunt. It is an option there in a bison space. However, I think we're going to go ahead and raid. So to raid, we have to get into a bad guy space where there are, oops, come on, tribes. So following along the movement lines, we will have to move one more space to be able to raid. So we will go ahead and move one more there. So that is moving one more. That is costing one more movement point. We now have 3 movement points left. Okay? All right. So raiding costs 1 movement point to raid. We're going to raid. So let's go ahead and spend that movement point as well. Prerequisite, the target space, i.e. we're raiding this space, which is the Upper Arkansas 4 space, as it were. It must be an enemy space or a peace space. Peace space is something that either is ally or is a peace space. As it is, it's not a peace space. It is an enemy space because it has an enemy tribe marker or a settlement on it, okay? Or a, Or, let me actually, hold on, let me get the definition of an enemy space. A square-shaped map space are enemy spaces, i.e. these right here, okay? That contain a tribe or a settlement counter. Peace spaces, however, are not enemy spaces. In other words, a space that qualifies for both an enemy space and a peace space trumps. So, anything that has a tribe or a settlement or a square space on it like that are enemy spaces. All right, so there's our prerequisite. We are there. Cool. Now the procedure to raid, there are 4 steps. The first thing is to conduct a success check. We'll get into that in a moment. For each success drawn during our success check, we're going to collect a horse or a captive from the stock, i.e. we're going to raid them and we're going to steal horses or we're going to take captives. Those are resources, okay? And the band that does so is going to take possession, meaning they're going to go into that stack, okay? The third step is if at least 1 success is drawn, place a ravage counter on the target space. So these ravage counters, remember, if we put one out here, we need 3 or more of those, and then whenever that happens, whenever completing a player action per the Apache War card, 3 of those removes that tribe. That is a really good thing. That's going to be one of the goals that we're going to be going after, right, for the game. And then finally, if the target space is a peace space, yada, 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 it's not. Okay. So now, step 1 of a raid is going to be conducting a success check. The success check has 4 steps. All right. Step number 1, determine the number of counters to be drawn from the success check draw cup. Now, we have not talked about that. Here, all of these question marks, there are 22 of them in here, and I believe there are 10 or 13 actual success markers that are listed as success. There are going to be enemy action point markers that range from 2 to 4 out there. And then eventually there will be some of these markers which are going to be enemy instructions. We don't want to draw those. But as it is at the beginning of the game, there are no enemy instructions in here. But we're going to draw, hopefully, a lot of successes out of here, okay? But it's possible we're going to give the enemy action points as we draw from here as well. So, determine the number of counters to be drawn from the successes check draw cup. Draw counters equal to the active band strength. Our active band has 2. So it means we're going to be drawing a minimum of 2 counters. However, if conducting an action and the active band possesses the Mahimiana, i.e. that one here in this stack, which let's say he does, or they do, roll a die. If the die roll is less than or equal to the headman's medicine marker, okay, so, then we're going to draw bonus counters. So, let's take a moment and look back at the Rancheria. The Mahimiana is the wartime leader. The medicine for the Mahimiama is at 2. Okay? So, when we roll, if we roll a die, or when we roll a die, if it's equal to or less than the headman's medicine, i.e. 2 here, then we're going to draw 1 extra counter. If the die roll is less than or equal to half of the headman's medicine, i.e. a 1 in our case, we get to draw 2 bonus counters to a maximum of 2 bonus counters. All right, so what does that mean? Right now, we have a base draw of 2. Early on, I think, and the peanut gallery can chime in if they disagree, right now, having the Mahimiama with us is probably a good thing, so drawing more is going to be good because there are no more success. There will never be more successes in here than there are right now. And drawing more of these is going to be beneficial for us. Okay? So I think having the Mahimiama with us is going to be a good thing. So therefore, we have a base of 2, plus we're going to roll for the Mahimiama. Okay? Oh, and actually there is one other thing I should point out. There are, let me show you all this. There are 2 sets of counters, and actually I want to zoom in on this because I think this is easy to screw up. When you get your set of, or when you get your copy of Comancheria, give me a second. You know what? Let's do this. When you get your set, there are going to be 2 different sets of success markers. You can see that one is white and one is kind of a beige color. Those are 2 completely different sets. Do not mix those. You'll notice that this one is not counterclipped, this one is. This is literally in case you wear out these counters, then use those. Otherwise, just keep them in a bag and never use them. Okay? So, that's what the different sets are. Don't ever mix them, you will screw up the game. So there's 2 identical sets of 22 counters in each. Okay. All right. All right, yeah, that's what the peanut gallery is chiming in about. All right. So let's go ahead and draw. So first we have to roll. So we're going to roll. So if we equal to or lower than that number, we're going to get one bonus counter unless it's less than or equal to half. I.e., if we roll a 1, we draw 4 counters. If we roll a 2, we draw 3 counters. If we roll anything else, we just draw the 2 counters. 3. Okay, so we're just going to draw the 2. And you know what? Let's see. I'm trying to think where to put these. I didn't have this set up. I apologize. Screw it. Let's just do this. All right. Yeah, that's not going to happen. Hold on one second, y'all. We're just going to bring this down south. Okay. So all of these markers, make sure I don't screw this up, those go into the other cup. I was just using those as the example. We're using the pure white ones, as you can see right there. Okay? All right, so we are going to draw 2 of these. There we go. So let's, a moment. All right, so that's, wow, that's terrible. Okay, so we drew enemy action points. So what's going to happen now with those is we are going to, oh, that was terrible. Okay, we are going to take these 2 markers and we're going to put them over here in the available enemy action points area, right there. That's step 3 and step 4, right there, done. Well, for the raid, we did the success check, or not, as it were. That was not a good start. For each success drawn, we got to collect resources. Well, there were none, so that sucks. So, and if there was at least 1 success drawn, place a ravage counter. There wasn't. There was none. That was a terrible draw. So that's the end of the raid. But we're there. We still have 2 action points. Or I'm sorry, 2 movement points. So you know what we can do again? We can do a raid. So let's do it. We'll spend 1. We'll do the exact same thing. We're going to draw a success check. That is right there. So we're going to roll again. Same rules apply. We're going to do the exact same thing. Hopefully do better. That was not a 2 or less. So we're going to draw 2 of these. Shuffle those up. See if we can draw a little bit better. Mike, welcome to Comancheria. Hey, there we go. That's a whole lot better. All right. So we got 2 successes on that, okay? Note the number of success counters drawn. If the acting band possesses a Mahimiyama, place all the success counters drawn into the success box on the medicine track. Okay, well, it does. So let's go over to the Rancheria display again. We're going to take these 2 success markers, and you see where it says success for that Rancheria. Then obviously the Mahimiyama gets those, so we put that there. We put that there. There are 2 of them. Excellent. Okay? All right. Now, there were no enemy APs drawn, so we don't have to worry about putting any more over there. So that was step 1 of the raid. Step 2, for each success drawn, collect a horse or a captive from the stock. Well, I think we could do 1 of each. So we will grab a horse and we will grab a captive and add it to our stack. And the next thing is step 3. If you have at least 1 success drawn, place a ravage counter. Well, there was at least 1 success drawn, so we'll take a ravage counter and we will put it over here onto the tribe, like so. There we go. Excellent. And it's not a P space, so we're done. Now, a couple of things here. Let's go ahead and talk now stacking limits, okay? In fact, let's go back over here. The stacking limits, and I want to get this verbatim from the rule book so I get this right because I think this is super important and it's going to dictate what we will do and what we would have done as far as horses goes, okay? Stacking limits can be violated during a band's activation. So we activated it, we've been moving, we've been doing raids, etc. So you can violate the stacking limit during that. However, during Operation Cleanup phase, then stacking limits are going to be checked. A round spaces are all of these spaces. So for instance, 4, 3, 2, etc., etc. All of those spaces out there, they may contain 1 rancheria, kind of like what is up here, okay? They may contain, or a settlement. There are no settlements out there, but those are hexagonal counters of various colors. So for instance, like these. They may have a single tribe or a single band counter. So you'll notice that if we stay here, there is a tribe and there is a band, our band, and an enemy tribe. That's bad because that violates the stacking limit, okay? Stacking limits do not apply to anything else. So resources, ravage, peace, ally, colonial enemy space markers, or face down success markers, or war columns. None of those things. So we could have 100 horses. I'm exaggerating because there aren't 100, but you could have 3 horses, you could have 2 captives, you could have a trade good and 3 food and a band, and that's okay. But if you have a band and a tribe, that is not okay. So I hope I'm explaining that, okay? Because during the Operation Cleanup phase, every place where stacking limits are exceeded, remove the band counters back to the stock and the entire set of resources that are underneath it in that stack, you lose. Don't do that. So in other words, we either got to kill the tribe, that's not going to happen right now, or we need to bug out, i.e. vacate that space. Now, one thing that I did not mention in all of that were bison counters. Bison, we can cohabitate with bison, so we could then, so we have 1 movement point left, we could go ahead and move back to here if we want. However, it may behoove us, because it is easier to activate a band on future operations if they are a part of a rancheria, okay? Because remember, when these bands are here in the rancheria, they're actually over here and there can be multiple bands. Otherwise, normally there's only one band that you can have in a given space. So I could have this band and that entire stack of stuff right here hanging out with that bison, or we go ahead and get all the way back to kind of home base. Think of it that way. And I think that's probably the smarter thing for us to have done. So we have one movement point left. How much does it cost to move to take an take that action? It costs us 1 to move 1 space. So our entire stack will then move 1 there. Now, horses, you can discard a horse to give you 1 more movement point. You can use that movement point for whatever, to raid, to, whatever is allowed. However, because we had that 1 horse with us and we have multiple horses now with us, right? That's our entire stack right there. We can discard 1 of those horses back to the supply to gain a movement point. And we will do so. So we'll go ahead and take those horses. We'll put them back into the supply. So available resources back down here, okay? Not here, but there. And then we get a movement point and hey, whoop, that stack now comes back to there. Hopefully that makes sense. There we go. All right. That band is now done. Okay. A moment. One more thing I want to do. Give me 1 second. Okay, yeah, that band is now finished. So remember, the flip side of that band is on the finished side there. So because they are back in their rancheria, so these guys are going to actually go ahead, come on back up here, and they are going to come back over to here. Now, what I am not going to do right now is I am not going to unstack all of this stuff like that. Okay, why? Because this is an example of all of these things are still possessed by this band there. All of that must remain in that stack until later on when we're able to clear that off. That band is now finished as shown by the F. And now we go back to the take actions step. If bands remain on the medicine track, repeat this step or stop. So in other words, this band can now activate if I want. It does not have to. You, excuse me, you must flip or you must activate 1, but you do not have to activate more than 1. There's going to be reasons why that you may not want to, but in this case, we do want to. So what do we want to do? Well, I'll leave it up to the peanut gallery. Do y'all want me to go hunt or do we go raid? What do y'all want to do? Okay? All right? So we will go ahead and activate that other one out here. Okay? And we are definitely going to bring at least 1 horse, probably at least 2 horses with us. We could take the 3rd horse, I suppose, but and we shouldn't have to worry about these quite yet. So as far as like them coming and attacking us, no, we don't really need to worry about that right now. Oh, that's a good point. Successes without the war chief go out of play. It's a fair point, but we still, the good news though is we would still get a ravage marker. I kind of like what Diego says here, which is hunt bison so we can have more resources and then move to attempt to have another ravage counter. I can get on board with that. I think we go ahead and take the horses with us. So we take all 3 horses. All right. All right, so 5 movement as shown on there, right, on our band. So we have a horse. So we will go ahead and move. So that's going to be 1 movement down to 4. And I say we go ahead and hunt. So the band does not possess the Mahimiana. So therefore it's going to cost us 3 movement points to go ahead and hunt. 1, 2, 3. We have successfully hunted. So therefore the bison will now go into our stack there. And we are in that space. So let's see. Moving would be our last action point. Then we could discard a horse, which would leave us 2 horse, which would still allow us to move back to the rancheria even if we fail. I feel like that. I really want to get that second ravage counter, but we're only going to be able to draw 2 success. We're on our success check. We're only going to be able to draw 2. We need to be able to draw at least 1 of those 2. But the thing is, we're going to use all 3 of our horses if we do that, because it would be 1 here, a second to be able to raid. Provided we are successful, then that would be 3 to move back to this space, and then 1 that we will have taken on the success to move back there. That will use up all of our horses. Or do we spend 1 horse to just go back to our rancheria? I don't know what the right answer is here. Y'all decide. I'll leave it up to y'all, because I forgot I'm going to be using all of my horses and discarding all of them. I feel like that's a little aggressive and a little short-sighted. I think that might be a little hyper-aggressive, honestly. But if y'all think I should, then I will. Fango Wolf says, cautious early. I think so. I think we just spend the 1 horse to go back home. I think so. All right, seems y'all are of the same mind. So we will go ahead and spend our last movement point there. So we are down to 0 movement points, and we are now back home. That will come over here, and that will flip. Boom. Done. Okay? All right. So we now, if you notice, we have no bands left over here. So step 3 is going to come into play. You can collect action points if there are spaces that are empty that weren't used. If there were more space, if our medicine counter were up here and we had less bands, we would then be able to take some number, gain any action points. We can't do that, so we're just going to gloss over that for right now. And then step 4, and I think this one is important, is you may activate any band that's not in the reservation. Again, we're not worried about this space during our game today. You may activate any band, even if it's already finished. You can do so by spending action points equal to the band's strength. So we start the game with 1 action point. And if you take a look over here at the Rancheria, each of our band's strength at the beginning of the game is a strength of 2 and a strength of 2. We have 1 action point, which means we can't. However, if we had 2 or more action points banked, then we could reactivate these and send them back out and go basically take another turn with that band. However, we don't, so we can't, okay? You can, let's say we had 6 banked action points. You could do that 3 times because 2 goes into 6, 3, or any mix. You could do it once and stop. You could do it none. You could do it up to however many that you have the associated. You just can't go into it's not a Martin Wallace. You can't go negative. That's what I'm trying to say. All right. Then the last step of take actions is roll a die. If the result is less than or equal to the number position of operation counter on the operation track. So let's go ahead and show you the ops track, okay? Then you must do the move it to the must do passage of time. So, okay, that was a lot of words. Let's try this again. The operations track right here. When we get to step 5, if this operations marker is here, here, or here, then we're going to roll a die. If when we roll that die, it's equal to or less than whatever number that's on. So if when we were doing all these things that was there, we roll a die. If it's 3 or less, we then drop that down to must do the passage of time. If it's not on that space, which it is clearly not, you don't roll a die because it only matters for those 3 spaces. So if it's not, just drop it down 1 space. Boop, done. That's step 5. Then we go into the operations cleanup phase. Well, that makes sense? Are y'all following along? Yeah, Gusarino. You can bank shifts. Yeah, it's Comancheria. There you go, exactly. All right. Okay, so now we are done with the player operations, right? We chose to do the take actions operation, so now we are in the cleanup phase. So now the cleanup phase is going to be, as shown, all of these steps, okay? Well, ignore 4 for our game today, so it's going to be those 3 steps. Step 1, enforce stacking rules. Okay, so this is the point in time in which we would then have to look over here. So let's take a look. Now, obviously, the only area that we messed with was kind of up here. Are we violating any stacking limits? Do we have bands where there are tribes or anything like that? No, the answer is no. So, okay, we don't have to enforce stacking rules because, well, we do, just it doesn't apply. Bands in a rancheria may relinquish possession of resources and or Mahimiyama counters. Okay, so now that we are done with our player operations, now that and that can there. And all of our horses can be free. A moment. Our Mahimiyama is free. We have some captives. We have some bison. And we have Quattro. We have 4 horsepower. All right? So cool. We have done that. Then transfer all resource counters from the same operation space as the operations counter. So there may be things over here in which there may be resources. So there might be horses, there might be captives, there might be trade goods, something over here. Wherever this operation space is, then you would add whatever is here. You would then go ahead and add them over into our Rancheria resources boxes. Okay? Return all success counters from the same space on the operation counter to the draw cup. So if we have any success markers, any of these that are on here, we haven't talked about how they go there, but just know that if they are on the same spot, then they would go back into the cup. That makes sense? Okay? Have a good one, Rocky. All right. So that is step 1 of the operation cleanup phase. So enforce stacking rules, which this is very much shorthand because there are more things than just enforce, because obviously you can unpack all of your resources, you need to look at the ops track, all that, but this is shorthand to remind you of what it is. So now we are over there on the second one. Roll a die for each rancheria with finished bands. Well, we have 1 rancheria in play. Does it have any finished bands? The answer is yes. It has 2 finished bands, but it does have at least some. If the die roll is less than or equal to the number of finished bands in that rancheria, in our case, 2, the enemy executes 1 free instruction. Something bad happens usually. So if we roll a 1 or a 2, that is not a 1 or a 2, so we skip it. Or we did step 2, I should say, okay? So step 2 is now done. We now go into step 3. Draw and reveal 1 counter from the success check draw cup. Again, the cup being this guy, right? If it's a success, return it to the draw cup. Well, let's just draw it and see what happens. Okay, it is not a success. So if it's an instruction would be any of these, or say that war one, which doesn't exist yet in the cup. It's not, but if it were, we would resolve it. But if it's an enemy action point counter, place it into the available enemy action point box. Okay, so this then joins the party over here into that. Okay. Now, unless there are 0 enemy action points, there are 0 enemy action points. However, there are 7 over here. So 0 plus 7 is not 0, it is 7. So therefore, we are then going to do what's called section 6.2.2, step A. That is going to be this. So resolving enemy instructions, okay? If there were, this is B and this is C during certain things, you'll have to do either A, B, or C. As it is, we're going to do A. All right, so now what we are going to be focusing on is this part of the board over here now, okay? So, step 1, if the enemy has at least 1 action point to spend, and when I say that, I mean between the, zoom in on this so you can see, there. Between the available enemy action points, kind of what they've banked is a good way to put it, between all of those, as well as anything that is down here in the available action points. If that number is greater than 0, which obviously it is because there are 7 here, roll a die and compare the result on the enemy action table of the current history card to determine the active enemy. Okay, so what does that mean? Our current history card, and our only history card for today, is going to be this card right here. So we're going to roll a die, and depending on what we roll, it's either going to activate the north, the west, or the south. And you know what? Now that I think about it, because I don't want to confuse us, and I think it helps drive this point home a little bit, I'm going to set those aside because those aren't going to come into play today. It's only going to be the north if we roll a 1 or a 2. It's going to be the west if it's 3, 4, 5, or it's going to be south if it's 6. Make sense? Okay, so y'all can see that. That's going to be 1, so it's going to be the north. So that is going to be the enemy that is going to be active. Okay, so we know this. So what we're going to do is I'll just use the other die to show that, hey, the north is what we're going to be activating. Then we have to roll a die again and compare what we roll again to which column is going to activate. So now we're going to roll again. And that was 3. So 3, that is going to be the C, or the hunt one, okay? If it were empty, then we would just not do anything, but it's not empty, okay? We're going to flip this one, so to the backside, and it's going to change it from hunt to raid. That's bad for us, okay? All right, so done. So now we go into step 3. Step 3 is total the number of enemy action points. That is a total of 7. We then look at what is the very, very top up here. And if this number, 7, is higher, equal to or higher than the number, this plus the any banked action points, it's a total number. So in our case, it's 7 plus 0, which is 7. If this number is equal to or greater than the number that is on this, you activate it and you do what it says that you're going to do. Okay? All right, so we're going to do that. So we're going to take 2 enemy action points and we're going to do the raid. So now that we have done that, this is going to go back into the cup. Just going to set that aside. And now we are going to carry out an enemy raid. Okay, wrong side. There it is. All right. So now we are going to look over here at the raid section. The raid section is here and there, and we're going to walk through those steps for this. All right. So doing this one right here. It says, step 1, if the North already has a war column in a map space. What does that mean? That means, let me find one, if it has one of these counters already out there on the board. It does not, so we're going to skip step 1. All right. Step 2, if there are 1 or more Ravage counters in an enemy space belonging to the active enemy, execute a recover instruction instead and terminate this procedure. That was a lot of words. What did that mean? Okay. So you'll notice that we are talking about the North. The North are the gray counters. We look up here, this is this enemy, and these are their tribes. Okay? So, we look. If there are 1 or more Ravage counters in an enemy space, there are. Instead of doing a raid, instead we're going to do a recover instruction. A recover instruction, so the raid, it goes from this and this to instead we're going to do the recover action. Okay. It says, remove 1 Ravage counter from any space containing an active enemy's piece. Say that. If there are more than 1 Ravage counters on an active enemy spaces, use random selection. So in other words, if this had some and this had some, we'd roll a 6-sided die and like 1 through 3, 4 through 6, and that's what it would determine. So as it is, this Ravage counter gets removed and, well, it wasn't wasted. Let me say that, right? Even though we now have no Ravage markers out there, which sucks for us, right? We did get a captive, and we started with 4 horses. We have a bison and a captive now, so it wasn't completely. Oh, back up. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. There's one other thing I forgot to mention. On the recover thing, thank you. Who was that? Paul. I appreciate that. I told you, have it committed to memory. The history card. Again, we're going to take this. We're going to look here. While in play. Okay, enemy recover instructions. That's what we're currently doing. Succeed only on a die roll of 1 to 3. On a 4 to 6, the enemy spends the action points, but no Ravage counters removed. Okay, so let's hope we roll high. Okay, let's roll a 4 through 6, shall we? Hi-ya! All right. So the Ravage counter does not get taken out because of the history card. Thank you, Paul, for that. Okay? So, yay, that stays. Okay, so now that that's done, that completes the raid, sort of, right? Because it said to do the raid. But if there is an enemy Ravage marker, instead do a recover. But we failed in the recovery, or they, as it were, failed in the recovery because of the history card. But the raid was completed, so we spent the 2 enemy action points. It now goes over to the same spot to the right of the inactive track, because that is now done. Okay, that makes sense, I hope? But now, we continue going. So now, let's go back to the operation cleanup phase. Okay? Check that. Sorry. Go back to the, there we go. Back to here. Sorry. Okay. So we're still in step 3. If action points remain available, but no instructions remain, then basically you're done. But are there still instructions for the North? Yep. Are there still some number of action points equal to or greater than the top 1? Yep. So they get to do that. In fact, they must. Okay, so they're going to do the top one. The top one is ally. It's going to cost them 3 action points. Those action points are going to now go back into the cup, as you saw right there. And now we are going to do an ally action. Now, just so I don't forget, again, this is only for recover actions. Up here, no, no, and this is only for war and subjugate. So instead, we're just going to actually do the ally action. A moment real quick. I just saw that Jess. Thank you, Jess. I'm serious. So, thank you. All right. Anyway, let me focus. Give me a second. Okay. So, the ally action now is going to be up here, section 631 in the rule book, or just this on the player aid. Okay? All right. So, getting back to that. Step 1. If one or more ravage counters in an enemy space belong to the active enemy, i.e. the North, execute a recover instruction instead and terminate this procedure. In other words, don't do the ally. Is there a ravage counter? Yes. Instead, do a recover. What's the recover? The recover is the same thing here, so we're going to roll 1 through 6. Hopefully we roll a 4 through 6 and done. Okay. Hot damn. Done. Excellent. Okay, so ally is done. Now, even though technically we're doing recover actions, we're only, let me show you. It says here, step 1, instead do a recover action as it shows right here, and then terminate, i.e. stop right there. So we did the ally, which just said to do the recover, which we did per that. Okay, so that's done, and those action points are now spent. Okay, now, there are 2 enemy action points left. We need 3 to do a raid, or they, I should say, need 3 to do a raid. 2 is not equal to or greater than 3, so what's going to happen? These 2 are going to go back into the cup. We're going to come over here, and the available enemy action points, boop, they're going to bank them. Now, just because the North, i.e. the gray, bad guys, bank these are available to whatever the active enemy is. So whether it is the North, whether it's the East, which isn't for us, but the South or the West, they have now 2 banked action points in addition to any that end up here, and that becomes that number. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay? All right? Somebody give me a clue in chat. Let me know y'all are following along and all this is making sense, please. All right, so now we have done step 4 and step 5 of the 622A. Basically is do it, move it over to the right. But now they don't have enough action points left, okay? So now we go down to step 6. Step 6, so we did 4 and 5 as we went along, but now it's step 6 because if action points remain available but no instructions remain or they don't have enough, then you just go down to 6. Increase the enemy's action points on the general records track. We did that. Okay, done. Return all enemy action point counters to the draw cup and now reset the enemy instruction display. That is going to be this. And this is something that is not super clear on how to do when you see it written out, but it's actually functionally very simple. So step 1 says, starting with the top and working down, take these and move them all up there. Then starting on the inactive at the bottom and move it 1 at a time to fill slots there, boom, done. That's step 1 and step 2. Okay? And thus, we are done with resolving enemy instructions. Okay? So that can now be removed. So now that we have done that, okay? So now we have actually done step 3 of the operation cleanup phase. Okay, so now we would, if the Santa Fe card, boop, done. So we now come over to the war column phase. So we will start with the war column phase. And by the way, actually, should there have been one that starts over there? I don't think so. Nobody was yelling at me that there should be, but no, there is not. All right. Okay, good. Septifolia, Stephen. Okay, cool, good. All right. Glad y'all are following along. I'm glad. Like I said, this is very procedural, and I realize we're moving very, very slowly through this, but I think this is the whole point of doing this for y'all. The next time, if Jess thinks and y'all think that you would like me to do it, then I won't step it through this slowly necessarily, but I think it's important to do so for today, okay? And I agree with what Findle says here. Playbook does a good job of not only telling you what to do, but what it means from a narrative standpoint. I agree. I'm not really going into the details of that because I think this is going to be long enough as is. So there you go. Okay. Fango Wolf asks, what does it take to destroy the tribe? Well, per the Apache War, we need 3 Ravage markers, or if we have the Ute Alliance card, we can discard it, roll a die, and roll a 3 or higher, and we get to destroy a tribe. So that would be good. Okay? All right. So we are now into the war column phase. There are no war columns out here. However, you still go through here. Step 1, discard a card from the war event box. There is nothing there. If no war column, terminate this procedure. Is there a war column? No. Terminate this procedure. Done with the war column phase. Okay. So, over to the player operation. And what Paul said also, during the passage of time here, which is those ravaged tribes go bye-bye. That's a good way of putting it, too. Thank you. All right? All right. All right, cool. All right, so we are now back to the operation selection phase. Okay, so what actions are we going to take? Okay, oh, nope, I'm getting ahead of myself. Now that we've gone through that once, okay, what I would like to do is I would like to talk about, we've done most of the take actions. We have done raid, we've done move, we've done hunt. The only thing we haven't done is trade. We'll get to that one later. But we've covered these. Let's go ahead and talk about culture for a moment here. The culture action has 2 steps, very simple. It's 1, increase your culture points by 1 for every territory containing 1 or more rancherias. Sorry. There is a territory that has a rancheria. So that would be an increase of 1 culture point from 3 to 4. Okay? Increase the culture points by 1 for every Comanche-controlled territory. Comanche-controlled territory is no bad guys in a territory. In other words, a group of spaces out here of the same color that don't have any bad guys. Well, we don't have any of that. So we don't get any bonus culture. So that would be just 1. Then, roll a die. If the number is less than or equal to the number, and then we here, then move it down to passage of time, just like what and then we go into the operation cleanup, which is all of those things like we just did again. So that's the culture fit option, okay? Planning. Okay. Planning is going to allow us to do very powerful headman actions based on these chiefs here. However, the downside of planning and the planning action is all of your bands reduce 1 level of strength. So a 2 goes to a 1. A 1 goes to bloop back to the available. In other words, they die or they go away or they're in some way removed from your availability. You then can purchase more in the passage of time action. So the penalty for doing the planning is these go down 1 strength respectively. However, you get to take really powerful actions. Moral of the story, I think we're going to take more actions. So we're going to go ahead and do that action there. Okay? correct me if I'm wrong, Paul and Fango, the only way to activate bands that are not back at our Rancheria, so for instance, if we had left one here, is by spending action points to activate them based on the strength of what they are. We have one action point, we couldn't activate them. So that's one of the reasons, I believe that's correct, that we want to bring them back to the Rancheria, okay? Probably 2 or 3, Luke, I would say, provided you play it in short succession, okay? Right, and the other option is the way that you turn or that you get another Rancheria out on the board is to have a band out here by itself. When we get to the passage of time, that puts a Rancheria out there. Moment real quick. Yeah, okay, yep. That makes sense? Cool. All right, good. All right, so we're going to take some actions. All right. So step 1 on take actions. Choose a Rancheria to activate when we only have A. Okay, flip all the bands that are activated Rancheria to their activated side, i.e. not finished, right? So, and we'll put one there. We must put one there. Done. By the way, you might be asking yourself, what are we doing with these successes that are over here on our Mahimiana track? When we get to the, that's one of the things that happens with the planning action or a planning operation is we will turn these in to things and boost up basically the leadership ability of our various leaders, as well as putting them out here, which then they will go back into the cup. But until we do a planning, they're going to hang out here, which means that's less that are in the cup also. Okay? All right. So let's go ahead and get to it, right? So we're going to activate the rightmost band and rinse and repeat, and we're going to go through all of that again. So now it's going to pick up the pace a little bit. Okay? So the rightmost band will go out there. A moment. Bison and captives. So hold on. I guess there's one more thing that we should go over before we get too far ahead of ourselves. Bison and captives are going to be good for trading with other tribes for other resources like trade goods. Trade goods will allow us to do re-rolls, which are going to be very important whenever we do battles and so on and so forth, as well as to trade for food, because you'll notice, and I want to point this out here, I use this one, in the bottom left-hand corner of the resources, so in the bison there is a 1 there, and of a captive there is a 2, there is a 1, but you'll notice on a food marker, there is a 2 in the bottom left-hand corner. Or, if you prefer, you could flip it over and it says, it's 2 population points. Why do those things matter? Because during the passage of time, you're going to be able to spend these population points, whether they're bison or captives or food, to be able to either strengthen your bands going from 2s to 3s, 1s to 2s, etc., or create new bands with them. So that's why you're going to want to kind of upgrade bison and captives to food as well as trade goods, which are going to be re-rolls. Okay? So, but as it is, if we are going to focus on raiding, which I think we are going to focus on this turn, we don't really need to worry about bison and captives for this set of operations. Instead, we're just going to grab some horsies and let's go. So we'll grab 2 horses and our band, and we'll go ahead and Mahamiyama. They will go out there. We will set our movement to 5, and let's rock and roll. So we're going to go 1, 2 movement to get on down there. There we go. So that's 2 movement, 1 movement, 2 movement. Then we will go ahead and spend 1 to raid again. Okay? So we have to do a success check again The success check is how many, what's the strength? The strength is 2, as you can see there. It does have the Mihimiyama, so the Mihimiyama's current medicine rating is 2, so we're looking, since this die seems to roll high, let's try this one. We want a 1 or a 2. That was a 4, so never mind, we're just going to draw the 2. Okay. So, not looking. Okay, so we draw that. Oh, come on, glory to Rome. Wow. So that's 5 enemy APs. Yay, that's awesome. That was a failed raid. No successes. We'll spend 1 more and raid again. It has the Mihimiyama, so we will draw again, or we will roll, hopefully rolling a 1 or a 2. That is not, so we will draw 2 more. And because I imagine y'all are wondering, let me get the distribution. Does it say? No. I'm trying to see if it shows how many there are. There are 10 or 13 successes. It's one or the other of the 22. Okay? Terrible. So, there really are successes in there. So, we're drawing 2. Okay. All right. Yeah, so the 4 goes there. The Mihimiyama is there, so that will go up here as a 3rd success. We will go ahead and grab a horse and not a captive. The horse, because for every success, right? We get to add that there. And we add a ravage marker. That'll be 2. I think we do it again. Okay. The playbook, page 2. Thank you. Thank you. There are 10 successes, 4 enemy APs. There are 3 enemy APs, and 2 enemy APs. Okay. So there are 3 of them out, which means there are 7 left. I say we go ahead and burn 1 more AP. If we do and we fail, then we will need to spend 2 of the 3 horses to go and get out of there. And that's giving them a ton of... I'm okay with that. I think we do 1 more. So let's go ahead and use our last. So because we had the Mihimiyama, I think we go at... We only need 1, but... A moment. If we choose to not do this, then we would just draw 2 for the next one because that band will not have the Mihimiyama with them. Here, we would roll and we would draw potentially 2, or it's going to be 2, 3, or 4, whereas with this band it would only be 2 because they don't have the Mihimiyama with them. But I say let's go ahead and do it. I can't seem... apparently he's a terrible leader. He's terrible. So apparently he's like me. Okay, so we will draw 2 hopefully 2 successes. There we go. Okay, that's not so bad. Okay, so the 2 will go there. And another success up there, that's a good thing, I think. And a ravage marker, so that's 3 ravage markers. And then we will take... Do we take another horse to get back to 4 horses, or do we take another captive? Let me, a moment on the trading, hold on. Let's just grab a horse. We have the one captive. I'm okay with that. So we grab the horse. All right. So we are out of movement points. Okay. Yeah, right? Seriously. We are out, but we do have horses to expend, and we will do so. So we will spend 2 of those horses to go ahead and go 1, 2. Those will go back into the supply being here, okay? And then all of them will go ahead, and that's 1, that's 2. That means this comes back over here. Sorry, there we go, yep. And it goes, stays in the stack. Those are unavailable for that band. And now, a moment. Let's take a look also at the Apache War card, okay? The Apache War card, which is the one on the left, says, after completing a player action, okay? So, a player action is a raid. So, let me be clear on this, okay? So a player action, as it shows here, is one of these actions. Okay, one of those 4. We just finished a raid. So now that we have finished it, if there are 3 or more Ravage counters on a tribe, remove that tribe from play, return the Ravage counters to the stock. Hot damn, we go into Sizzler. Okay? So these 3, as you can see, those will go back into the supply. And the tribe marker, you ain't got to go home, but you can't stay here. This will come down into the out of play box. Now there is one that already that existed that wasn't placed out here at the beginning of setup. It could potentially come into play in the game, but that's why it's over here. But it now gets removed to the out of play box. Theoretically, it could come back, so that would not be good for us. But hey, success! We've removed apparently an Apache tribe. I mean, that's good for us because again, we have to control the Upper Arkansas. Well, we are 1 away from being able to do that. Okay. Okay. So that is done. That band is now complete. Now the question is, do we want to activate that band? Okay, so a moment. I'm looking at trading. I don't think so. And the reason why I'm saying I don't think so is trading, it costs a movement point per resource spent. So it would cost, let's go ahead and zoom back in. If we chose to trade as a player action, we can move across this dotted line. Now, the bad guys can't, we can. We can move to an enemy space. There can be no Ravage markers in the in the west area, which there are none, and we would be able to trade with this enemy space. So it would cost 1 of the 5 movement points there, and let's say we loaded up with horses, bison, and captive, and that's 1. That would leave us with 4 movement points in that case. We can spend the bison, the captives, and the horses, and for each resource counter spent, you have to spend a movement point. So let's say we spent, I don't know, say 3 more movement points to get rid of 3 of those. But the problem is we only have 1 AP. Because it is, for every non-captive counter spent, you have to spend an AP if it's not a piece space. This is not a piece space, so it would also, we would only be able to trade 1 non-captive. I don't think that would be the best use of our actions, is what I'm trying to say. So I see no reason to not activate that band. So if that's the case, then I say we activate, hold on. I say we activate this band and we go ahead and bring the 2 horses. Again, we're not trading, so the bison and captives do us no good. So let's go ahead there, there, and there. We'll go ahead and do that. We'll bring them out. That's going to be 5 movement up here. And let's get after that other tribe, shall we? Okay. So that's going to be 1 movement, 2 movement. We're down to 3 movement points left. Now, here's the other thing to keep in mind, though. They have 11 enemy action points here, okay? We could hunt some bison instead of doing a raid, right? We could hunt some here, we could hunt some there. Here a bison, there a bison, everywhere a bison, bison. We could hunt, we could hunt. But the fact that we don't have the Mahimiyama with us, it's going to cost us 3 movement points to hunt. I think we go ahead and raid again there. So, or not again, but we raid there. So it's going to be 1 movement point there to do so. We do not have the Mahimiyama with us, so therefore the strength is just going to be 2, which means we're only going to draw 2 more. Unfortunately, it doesn't count. We will draw 2, hopefully, success. Now, important thing to note, we do not have the Mahimiyama with us, so they will not go here. Instead, they will go to the out-of-play box, which they then will later on come back into the cup, but they will not benefit us there, and they're still not in the cup. But they still will get us Ravage markers, okay? All right? So keep that in mind. So, okay. So we're going to draw 2. 3 enemy APs and a success. You know what? I'll take it. I say that, and we'll see how things play out here. But that's now, I'm pretty sure that's 14 enemy action points. That's not good. That's a sick, sick number. So a moment here for the success check here. Yeah, that goes into the out-of-play box, so that will come down here, okay? And we did successfully do so we can grab a captive or a horse. Now, the interesting thing here is I don't think I want, and a Ravage marker goes up here as well. I don't think I want to, we have 2 movement points left. 1, 2, to be able to go back home. Or 1, 2 to go there, which potentially allows us to put out a new rancheria later on during the passage of time. Now we have a little bit of time for this, so I think we go back home. So if we're going to go back home, we're going to have those 2 horses already with us. Oops, I'm sorry, wrong thing. Hey, Drew. So we have 2 horses. In addition to those 2, we have the 2 that are over here in this stack here. So we still have our base of 4. There's nothing special about the number of 4. It's just 2 go there, 2 go there. It works out well. My point is we're not going to have to spend those 2 horses because we have 2 movement points, right? And what I'm getting at is captives, if we were to think about trading for a reroll or something like that for trade goods over here as maybe during our next operation, then we don't, because it's non-captives cost AP, whereas captives don't. So my point here is I think as our spoils of war for the 1 success that we drew, I think we actually go ahead and take a captive instead of a horse. That's basically the long way of me trying to say. Or sell the captives for food, if not for trade goods. So either way, I think that's the right decision there, okay? All right, so now we will go and spend 1, 2 movement points. And we'll go ahead and go back home. Done. Okay. So now, There are no empty spaces to the left. We don't need to worry about that in step 3 of take actions. Step 4 is if we had multiple or 2 APs, because those are 2 strength. If they were 1 strength, it would only cost 1 AP to reactivate them, but as it is, they're 2 strength. So we can't reactivate any bands, and there are no bands out here in which to be able to activate, which would cost, again, strength. So the reactivating or activating, if they're out here, it's all in the same step. It's however you want to use your APs. So that's that. So we're done with that because we only have 1 and we can't do anything with 1. So therefore, then the operations here, it is not on a numbered space, so that will just drop on down. Now, you might be asking yourself, why didn't we do anything with this war marker? The reason is, when we do our first passage of time, with the passage of time marker, when we go through those 15 steps, one of those is going to be when that drops down to there, that's going to be our cue to put that into the draw cup, but not until then, okay? All right, so we are done with that. So now we will go into the cleanup phase. So, okay. How do we bank more APs? That's during the planning phase. I believe, or is it during the passage of time? Hold on, let me double check. Yeah, it's headman actions, i.e. these, during a planning operation instead of a take action. But when we do that, remember, we lose a strength from every band in that Rancheria. Okay? Hopefully that answers that. All right. Y'all still with me? Y'all following? All right. So now we go into the operation cleanup phase. Step 1. Yeah, what Paul says is up there, planning or take actions when you leave multiple bands home, meaning there are empty spaces up here and your medicine is up higher, but we haven't. That won't happen until after the first time we plan, so that's why I didn't mention that. Okay, if that makes sense. Okay, all right. So operation cleanup phase. Enforce stacking. Again. Nothing, we've only messed around up there, so we don't have to worry about that. However, bands in a rancheria can now relinquish all of their stacks, so they will do so. So we have another captive over there. We have some wild horses and the Mihimiyama. There we go. And until these move up, we don't need to worry about. You guys can see it. I think that's good. All right. Again, if there was anything over here, those would go over there as well, but there's not, so the step 1 is done. All right. Then roll a die for every rancheria with finished bands. If the die roll is 2 or less, because there are the number of finished bands in that rancheria, then the enemy gets to do a free instruction, meaning they don't spend their APs and they still get to do whatever the top one is, depending on what we roll. So let's not roll a 2 or lower. Okay, we didn't. Good. Done. So that's step 2. No free instruction for them. Step 3 is draw and reveal 1 counter from the success here. Hopefully we draw a success because it immediately goes back in here and it doesn't add to their AP. Oh, come on, man. That is brutal. Wow. Well, this is going to be a massive turn for the enemy. Okay. So, now the question is, does the enemy have more than 0 action points? They have 2 plus a number I can't even count to. So I would say yes, that number is greater than 0. Okay? Seriously, this has been pretty horrible, I'm not going to lie. Okay, so now that we have done that, we now need to go through the enemy instruction. Okay? So we are going to do, if an enemy AP counter, add it to the AP box, then do A. So again, A being the main part right there. All right, so let's do that. If the enemy has at least one AP, I think they do. Roll a die. So in other words, now we're going to roll, I'm sorry, hold on. We're going to roll based on what that is, right? So who's going to activate? That'd be a 1. The North. That sucks. That's not who we wanted to activate. All right. So the North is going to activate because apparently I can't roll. And now we're going to figure out which one we're going to flip based on that. So we're going to flip the third one. That actually wasn't terrible for us, so that's okay. Okay. So here we go. So to be clear, they have 8, 10, 18, and 2 more banked. They have 20. 20. 3, 6, 11, 12, 13, 16, 18. They're going to do their entire instruction display. Okay? So that sucks. All right, but let's do it. So we're going to start with the top one. They're going to spend 3. So 3, these will go back into the cup. Take my word for it. They did. So the raid. The raid one, again, going back to, there is no war column in the North. So then, if there is a ravage marker, there is, instead, do a recover. And the recover, same rules apply here. A 4 through 6 fails. So come on, 4 through 6. That was a 3. Ravage counter is removed. Okay, so there is no more ravage counter out here. The raid is now done because it really was a recover, but so be it. All right, so the next one is now going to be hunt. Hunt is going to be 3, so we will take the 3, throw it back into the cup. And hunt says, step 1, if one or more ravage counters no, there are none. There are no ravage counters out here on the board, but specifically for the northern spaces. There are nothing. And you know what? I think I've done a really poor job of explaining one thing, okay? The gray enemy, the northern enemy, is going to follow the white lines, okay? So anything that has to do with the white lines on this, they do not, the enemies never follow the dotted lines. So anywhere you see this has to do with the white or the gray, the north. Okay, so if there are any, hold on. If there are any ravage markers out here that have to do with the northern enemy, which are these white lines right through there. So it doesn't have to just be that. It could have been here, could have been here, could have been there, there, because the white and blue lines, et cetera, okay? Whereas the yellow is going to be over here, just those ones, there, and these here. So if that makes sense, I think I did a poor job of explaining that earlier. I apologize. So, as it is, the hunt, there are no ravage counters out there. So instead, basically what this represents is, I think it's the Apache are coming down and hunting bison on our land. So they're poaching kind of on our turf, which is not great because they're going to take some amount of bison from us, but it's not attacking our rancheria, which, you know, that's good. All right. So step 2, because there's no ravage markers out there, randomly determine a territory. Territory. 1, 2, 3, 4. God, where's 5? 5, 6, based on where the dice are here. So it doesn't have to necessarily do with the north here specific. We're just going to roll a die and see what we roll. That was 5. So we're going to be looking down here in Brazos, Colorado. Okay, so coming on down south. Yeah. There we go. I think that's probably a better representation. There we go. Okay, so randomly determine a territory. Done. If there are one or more bison in that territory, remove one bison counter to the stock based on random selection. Okay, so we're just talking about the Brazos, Colorado. So what ones? There's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4. So basically, I'm just going to roll a 6-sided die, and a 1, a 3, a 5, or a 6, 3 or 4, I'll re-roll. That was a 2, re-roll. Yeah, nothing on 2. 6, that bison goes back to the supply. The supply would be right here in the available. So they have poached there. Okay. All right. Okay, cool. So that was hunt. And that cost the 3 resources and done. Now, if that territory had no bison, we would have done something different, but there were, so we're not going to mess with that. All right, next is going to be the ally action, which is going to be, it costs 5. Now, you'll notice that you never overpay. So how this is going to work is we're going to take 4, put them back into the cup, and they'll bank 1. But it's still going to be 5 because they still have 8 over here, plus 3 means 11 still to spend until they run out. Okay, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so this says, step 1 for the ally. Give me a second, let me get something to drink. If 1 or more ravage counters, yada, there are none. Okay. So because there are no ravage counters, we then go into step 2 for the first time. So step 2 says, place an ally instruction counter. That is this guy right here. We've already paid the 5, so we're going to go ahead and place that out there on a non-allied tribe, and it's the player's choice. It's my choice, our choice collectively. I choose to put it right here. If there are no non-already allied tribes in play, instead execute an encroachment instruction, kind of like how we were doing recovers instead of allies and stuff earlier. But guess what? That's now an ally. Guess what? We now have control of the Upper Arkansas. Yay, success. So what does that mean? That means the player must control the Upper Arkansas. First big part done. The second part, have a rancheria in a second territory. We haven't done that yet, but we now control because they're not hostile. They're an ally. As long as that marker remains, okay? As long as that, I did that the wrong way, you're right. That should move down to 1. Sorry, that was 4 and spent 1. Yeah, my bad. You're right. Anyway, as long as that marker remains, good news, we control it. Now, there is an important point here I should point out, and that is, okay, and this is a really good thing for us. That ally 5, that 5 is a really important thing for us. And the reason for that is when we get to the passage of time in step 11 of passage of time, we're going to roll a die for every piece and ally marker out here. So for instance, for this one, if the die roll is greater than this, in other words, if we roll a 6, that goes away. If we don't roll a 6, it remains, which means we control. So that's a really good thing. An ally 2 sucks because then a 3, 4, 5, or 6 removes the ally counter. An ally 5 is a really big number. That's about as good as that could have been. So that's a really, really good thing. Okay? I hope that makes sense. Okay, so that is the ally marker. Now, if you take a look over here into the enemy instruction, you'll notice that there's now going to be a gap here. That's okay because some of these markers will end up out there on the board. But we're not going to worry about that right now. Instead, we're going to continue because there's still enemy APs. So we're going to go ahead and spend, sorry, left-handed, spend 2 there for the hunt. So that goes back in, and now we are going to hunt again. There are no ravage markers, so we will roll for enemy territory. That is going to be number 1. Number 1, are there any bison? There are. There's one here, and there's one there. And so we are going to then roll. So we'll do 1 through 3, removes this one, 4 through 6, removes that one. 4 through 6, that one gets removed. That comes back into available resources, and boom, done. And the hunt now moves over to there. So you can see how hopefully this is like picking up speed a little bit, and you can kind of see. Yeah, oh, that's a very good thing they did for us, Gusarino. I agree. Okay, so the next one now is an ally 3. So now we will spend 4 and bank 1 and move it in the right direction that I did the opposite of earlier. So that's going to be spending 4, banking 1 more. So that's now back up to 2. They have 4 left. So the ally, again, no ravage counters. Place an ally instruction counter on any non-allied tribe. My choice. So now let's go ahead and look at the board a little bit closer, because now the obvious one is done. But now, where else do we want to go? So I'm thinking we do kind of close to us. That kind of makes sense, right? Or we could do it as a buffer between us and the other bad guys out here, okay? So if we take a look, we have this enemy space, we have this enemy space, and we have that enemy space, but that one's already an ally. We're not going to have to worry about any war bands coming out from the east here, but war bands can come from here, or from here, or from there. Well, these two are possible, but likely they would move this way to come, because they're always going to move towards a rancheria. They don't follow the dotted lines here, so they would probably move here. There's no tribes up there, so these kind of don't make sense to come down here. We could theoretically go ahead, we could turn this one into a ally, which would then slow them down if they were to come out here, okay? So I think that is at least a viable option to us. But realistically, I think I would prefer to get it closer to us. So I'm thinking this space, and not this one, because there's no bands that are going to come out from out east. So even though this doesn't help us slow down the Spanish, because we're not looking super long term in this game, because our goals are just our goals right there, right? Our objective. I don't think slowing them down is going to be terribly important. And getting an ally here is going to be an easier trade location. We can't use them as a launch point, but it's good. It makes trading cheaper for us. So y'all choose. Do we go to the Red River Space 5 up here, or do we potentially slow down the Southern Spanish in the Rio Grande 5? So y'all choose, and that's what we'll do. And I'll be right back while that's going on. Okay. All right, let me see here. We can trade in the Upper Arkansas up here already, which is going to be an ally that hangs out for a while. That makes sense. So let's see. That's a very good point Nate brings up. Hard to raid if you ally everyone close to you. That also is a damn good point. All right, y'all say Red River, so that's where we're gonna go. So that ally will then come out right there. Boom, done. So a 4, 5, or 6 would remove that later on. Okay, done. There's also the raid that's coming up. So hold on. One other thing I failed to mention. I don't think that's really going to matter. Yeah, that's okay. All right. The target for the Rancheria probably will be right here, I'm thinking. Either here or there. One of those two spaces. All right. So, enemy action points. It's going to be a raid. This is going to be a first legitimate raid. So 2 enemy action points go away. So raid, step 1. If the North already has a war column. Nope, it doesn't. If there are ravage counters, there aren't. Step 3, form a war column. Okay. So this is obviously going to be the North. Place the raid instruction into the same space as a randomly chosen non-allied tribe nearest to a rancheria. Okay, so let's go through that again. So this raid marker there is going to go out on the board into a randomly chosen non-allied tribe nearest a rancheria. The only rancheria is going to be here. The nearest tribe to that is going to be 2 steps away for pathing, but not for them to be able to come to us. 1, 2, 1, 2. I believe that is how that works. Let me double check and make sure. This is going to be 6, 3, 6. This is the first time doing it during the game, so here we go. Dash line connections may be used to trace the route when considering nearest non-allied tribe. So it's a good thing that we chose this one. Oh, no, it still would have been those, so never mind. So then it is going to be between those two, because those are the same distance, we are going to then randomly choose. So 1 through 3, 4 through 6 for that. 4 through 6, the raid is going to go there. Then we're going to place a North war column equal to the action point cost of the raid of 2. So we're going to put 2 action point strength or 2 strength on that raid right there. So that is now a 2 strength war column over there. Okay, that makes sense. So, done. Enemy instruction table is now empty, you'll notice, because there are no gray actions that are not in the inactive space. So now, even though there are no action points left here, there are 2 banked, but there are none left there. If action points remain, step 3 of right here, if action points remain available but no instructions remain in the column belonging to the active enemy, go to step 6. Increase the enemy action points. If there are any here, bank them, basically. Return all enemy action point counters to the draw comp, which we've already done, and then reset. So the reset, there are none left here, so this will come down and go up. this will come down and go up, this will come down and go up. Now, if we were to draw, again, the north, or if we roll a 1 or a 2 here, and we roll a 4, 5, or 6, all that means is we're not going to flip anything, but we still activate based on the number of action points we have in that order. And that's how that changes the order of how that works. Okay? I hope that all is clear and that makes sense. I hope. All right, so that is the, sorry, lost my spot. And this is why I have this. So the operation cleanup phase. Everything that we just did was a subset of step 3 right here. That was this, which was all of the counters based on the number of action points. So we did step 3 down here, and now we continue from step 3 on down. But as you can see, per step 3, step 4 is Santa Fe Trail. There isn't any. We're done with that. Okay? So that's done. So then we now go to the beginning of the war column phase. Well, there is a war column out there. So now we will actually have to go through here. A moment. Discard a card from the war event box. Boop, there is none. If there is no war column, terminate the procedure. Well, there's a war column out here now. Okay, so here we go. Otherwise, draw 1 card from the war deck. The war deck. Now, y'all haven't seen me shuffle these. Let's go ahead and shuffle. And there's only one war deck, and it's all these cards, okay? And it's going to basically, that is going to move towards our Rancheria. That's their goal, okay? Provided they can see it. Palo Duro, if it's here, they can't see it. But anyway. Okay. There, we'll cut. There we go. And we'll go ahead and draw this and put it out right here, since this is the first time we've seen this. Consult the war column movement portion of the card. That is all this stuff. Based on move towards the nearest Rancheria, stop in a space with an allied tribe, band, or Rancheria. And if already in the same space as any of those, then it doesn't move. But you see that the North, which has a war band out there, I'm sorry, a war column, so it's going to move towards the nearest Rancheria. Rancheria. I can't talk, I apologize. So, now let's talk about it. Colonial enemy war columns never move across dashed lines unless there's a card that says so. So in other words, colonial, meaning war column here or of the south, the green Spanish, never move across the dotted line unless there's something that breaks that rule. Pieces in Palo Duro are invisible, which I've already mentioned that. There is a Rancheria visible, so otherwise the war column moves towards the nearest band, which would hopefully become a Rancheria eventually. Okay, so it moves towards the nearest Rancheria. Now, the only question I have real quick, let me get there for movement, a moment. This is 3-1. North Tribe war columns may move across dash line connections. Okay. So, they move one space. That one space Oh, that's a good point. The war, hold on one second. We don't do the war event. All this card is for is the war column movement, okay? The only question I have is, because there is stacking rules for this, can that move onto that enemy space? I believe they can. So these would move actually up to there. So one space moves to there. Okay. So now, step 2 says roll 1 die for every in-play war column. If the die roll result is less than the war column strength, reduce its strength by 1. So in other words, the war strength is 2. We're going to roll. If we roll a 1 specifically, then it loses. It drops down from a 2 to a 1. I would argue that has to stay in the cup, even though that would be beneficial for us. Okay. So, doesn't reduce strength there. Now, draw a card from the war deck and place it into the war event box on the map. Consult the war event portion of the card and execute any when revealed effect. So the card that we drew, we're not doing for the war event. This card just gets discarded. But we're going to draw another one, and the war event, is going to take place. Okay? So now, when revealed, reshuffle the war cards deck, draw another card, and place it face up into the war event box on the map. Okay, so we will reshuffle and bring both of those back in. So you're always drawing 2 cards. Okay, those cards are back in there. I would argue that's probably pretty good. We'll cut. And now, my question for that, I didn't look at what number it is. Do we activate it? I would say yes. I'm not 100% sure on that. Yeah, we're going to draw 3 cards in this case. I think we activate this. It didn't say and do the action, but it did say put it up there in the war event. So I would say yes, we do. All right, and Paul agrees. So here we go. While in play, so not when it's revealed, but while this is in play, alert pickets. Tactics and Lords of the Plains effects inoperative while this card is in play. So, what that means is Tactics and Lords of the Plains. If we had those culture cards, those would be inactive as long as this card is in play. Okay? All right. So the good news is it didn't hurt us because we don't have those. So yay, that's good. All right. Step 4. In each war space that contains a band, allied tribe, but no rancheria, the player must fight a battle. Where that is. We're not there, so we don't have to fight a battle. And then in each war space that contains a rancheria. So, not yet, but those are going to move up there very, very soon. Probably next turn. So that's something to be concerned about. We need to make sure that we have a band in there so that it doesn't automatically lose the rancheria. But there's probably going to be a battle there. Or we move a band out there and they won't move, and we sacrifice the band to lock them down, which is probably what we're going to end up doing. So that is now the warband phase. Okay, so there's no battle, so we go into player operations. Okay. So I think we take actions, and we're going to want to trade with at least one of them, and then we're going to want to leave them out to be able to get another Rancheria. And we're in pretty good shape, possibly, to be able to win the game. So I would argue that we go ahead and take actions as what we do. So step one, choose the Rancheria to activate, flip all the bands. So here we go. That comes over, that comes over, that will go there and there. All right. So a moment while I get ready for battles. So what I want to look at for the battles, there we go. The band strength would be 2 plus 1 if it has the Mahimiyama. That would be 3. And horses don't help us. Okay. So why that matters? And yes, and the plus 1 for that. So that would be 2 plus 1 for the Mahimiyama is 3, and the horsemanship would be 4. So as long as we roll a 2 or higher, that would be good. So if that's the case, then how I think we do this, trying to look ahead for this, is we take 1 band here, and we're going to take all of the horses? The bison and captives? No. We will take that. We will take at least 2 horses, maybe a third. I will look into that in a minute. We'll take the bison and both the captives. Okay. That one is going to be at 5 movement points. So we're going to go 1, 2, leaving us with 3 movement points. And then, at that point, we will go ahead and trade. The target space must contain a settlement, a tribe, or a square enemy space. It has a tribe. Okay, good. The band may spend any bison, captive, and horse counters in its possession. For each counter spent, it has to spend a movement point as well. It is a peace space because it's an ally. Even though it doesn't say peace, ally works the same as peace. So we don't spend any action points for non-captives. And we can trade in any number of these spending 1 movement point per. So the 2 captives and the bison, I think we trade in. That's going to cost us 3 movement points. So if we trade in the 2 captives and a bison, so these 3 will go away, and I think we will go ahead and grab 2 trade goods and a food with that. Those are the 2 things that we can trade in. The trade goods are for rerolls. The food is for replenishing our bands, as well as establishing more bands. Okay? I think that's good. We're out of movement points. However, we do have 2 horses now. So I think what we will do at this point, oh shoot, hold on. So what I'm thinking here is I don't want to send them out. Because these trade goods and this food is a part of that band, I do not want to send them out to establish a new rancheria. Because I would spend both of my horses, so if I went 1, 2, or if I went 1, 2, then these trade goods and food stay with that band. I need the rerolls over here, potentially, to protect that rancheria. So I don't think that's a good idea. I think what we want to do is we actually want to spend those 2 horses. Yeah, to go ahead and bug out and get back home. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to spend the 2 horses for movement point 1, movement point 2, there. And this whole stack will now go back, and that is done. But they stay in that stack, unfortunately, right? So now we have the second band. The second band will have the Mihimiyama. They will come out there. They have 5 movement. And a moment. Let me think. Actually, I think I don't think I activate them, because stacking rules, they would die if they were out here. They don't battle. Only the game will battle with me. I don't battle with them. Yeah, I think we actually don't activate them. So check that. They're just going to come on and hang out right there. I think that's what I want to do. Because I would get a -1 if I use the finished. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. So we're done with those. So now we will go to the cleanup phase. I'm trying to make sure I don't overdo it and get ahead of myself. So the cleanup phase, stacking rules, and that's where they would die, right there. So that's why. So stacking rules, we're okay with all of this. Now the band over here can relinquish all of those re-rolls and everything, which is exactly what we want to do. And the trade and the food. So all of that will hang out there. All right. Roll a die for each rancheria with a finished band. If the die roll is less than or equal to the number of finished bands, execute a free instruction. Well, as you can see, there's only 1 finished band. So we roll. If we don't roll a 1, we're okay. There's a 1. All right. Well, they get a free instruction. So now what happens? That's frustrating. Now we're going to roll for what region? Right here. Oh, are you kidding me? The north? Really? Really? Okay. So the north will happen there. And then we're going to roll. If we roll a 1, 2, or 3, it will flip. Hopefully, let's roll big. Let's switch that out. That's a 3. So that will flip over to that. It's a free one. So the enemy action points that they have here don't get spent. It doesn't matter about this. I'm going to do a hunt. That's okay. So their hunt is going to be no ravage counters out there. Randomly determine a territory. That's going to be territory 2 here. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to remove a bison. 1, 2. This bison will go away. And that will go over here, which means those will now move up. And that will come down. That's their free one because I'm terrible. More ways than one because the finished band. Now draw and reveal a counter from the success. Here we go. So now we're drawing. And of course I roll a 1. All right, so it's going to be 3 enemy action points. Along with the 2 that they have banked, they have 5 action points. Okay, so going to do 622A again. Okay, so now we're going to roll based on this. Could we roll a 6? That'd be great. Just one time, can we roll a 6? Thank you. Okay, I used my one time. So that means the south is going to be the one that happens. Now we need to roll which die for that. The settle is going to flip, and that's going to be a subjugate. However, because that's a subjugate, let's go back to the development cards up top. And because this is still in play, war and subjugate instructions have no effect. The enemy spends the action points but does not actually execute the instruction unless the procedure would cause the player to execute or recover. There are no ravage markers, so good news. That's going to cost 4. So that actually wasn't bad. So that's going to be these 3 back into the cup. And one of those, they have 1 action point left. That's done, because none of these will ever be 1. So this will come over there. Done, which means all of these will move up. That will drop to the bottom. And now we just reset. So we just did all of that. We now get back here to the war column phase. Okay. Yeah, apparently all I had to do was ask, right, Findle? All right. So, war column phase. You're going to get to see a battle. Discard the card from the war event box. Or probably see a battle, not necessarily. So, you know what? I'm just going to put that to the bottom. No, I'm not. I'm going to... There. That's spent. Okay. There is a war column, so now we will draw a card and see if they move. If it's not the north, then it doesn't move because we haven't locked it down either. So hopefully, doesn't matter. It is moving. It's going to move 1 step. It will come up, and it's going to come hang out in the Rancheria. All right. So that will get discarded. That will now come up there. Roll 1 die for each in-play war column. So if we roll a 1 or less, or not a 2 or less, but a 1, it reduces 1. So I would like a 1, please. That was not a 1. Okay. So it does not reduce its strength, unfortunately. Draw a card from the war deck, put it in the event box, and execute any when revealed. So this will come over. When revealed, wide open spaces. Decrease the strength of the highest strength war column by 2 to a minimum of 1. If there are more than 1 war column type for the highest strength, apply this event to each of them. That's fantastic. Yay us. So, yay. So, this 2 strength war column goes away and becomes a 1 strength war column. Yay us. So that will now head on up there. Done. In each war space which contains a rancheria, if there are 0 bands, I lose a military point and the rancheria is destroyed. But there are bands. Oops, sorry. But there are bands. So we don't have to worry about that. If 1 or more band either lose 1 military point and fight a battle. Basically what's happening here is because it's a rancheria, We have done a poor job of leadership. We have allowed the enemy to infiltrate where we have our women and children, and that is shameful to us. So therefore, we lose a military point if we choose to do this, okay? And then fight a battle. Or we could lose 2 military point, lose all of our captives, and the war column strength loses 1. If the war column strength is 0 at that point, the war ends. In other words, the war band goes away. So we could, if we wanted. Have a good one, Paul. Thanks for hanging out. Okay. If we choose to lose 2 military points, the war band will just die. We have no captives because we actually traded all the captives in. But we're going to fight. So we're going to lose 1 military point, and now we're going to have our first ever battle. So now, battle resolution. Battle resolution is going to be here, and then battle results there. Okay? Step 1, determine the Comanche unit. Okay, so if battle takes place in a space containing a rancheria, it is. The player chooses which band in the resources box is the Comanche unit. The Comanche unit may take possession of any unpossessed resource and or Mahimiama counters in the rancheria resource boxes. Wow, okay. So it'll be the unfinished, it'll be that one, it'll be the trade goods. I am going to take both of those. That, the Mahimiama, and we'll go ahead, come on out, and we'll just lay all these out so that everybody can see that over there. Okay. Step 2. If the Comanche unit, which is now that unit that you're looking at there, spends a guns counter, we don't have any guns yet, roll 2 dice and select the highest die roll. That's good, but we don't have any guns. If no guns, roll 1 die and then apply modifiers. So, before I get into the modifiers, let's talk about the die roll. A 6 is an automatic victory. A 1 is an automatic loss. Okay? So, let's not roll a 1. However, trade goods allow re-rolls. So, okay. But now let's talk about modifiers. If there are any in-play cards that we wish to use, which say, I don't know, that, so +1 battle DRM for the Comanche bands in possession of horse count. Oh, never mind. We will actually bring a horse as well. So my bad, I forgot. Horsemanship. So that's going to be a +1 right there. Then +2 for the strength. So we're now at +3. The Comanche unit is not an allied tribe, so nothing there. It does possess the Mahimiama, so that's going to be a +1. So that's now at a 4. It is not on its finished side. If it was on its finished side, it would be -1. And then if there is a minus number on there, we would also subtract number on the warband counter. Okay? So that's going to be at a 4. So 4. Then step 3. You roll. So as long as it's a 2 or higher, we're going to succeed. We're going to win the battle. So here we go. That's a 4. 4 plus the modifier is 4, so that's 8. If the unmodified die roll is a 6, so a straight 6, or the modified result is 6 or higher, and not an unmodified one, the Comanche unit wins the battle. And if it was less than 6, or I rolled an unmodified 1, then we lose the battle. But we win. Apply the battle results. Okay. If the Comanche unit wins the battle, we did. Reduce the war column strength by 1. If reduced to 0, the battle ends, the war ends, and any participating Mahimiama medicine increase +1. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, we do have the Mahimiama with us, so that will increase. It's basically his prestige for leading a victory. That seems cool. That seems good. If the war column, after reducing that from 1 to 0, if it were, say, a 2 to a 1, because it only drops at 1, you continue fighting. You do it again. But as it is, he dead. There. And a moment. Okay, so that's the end of the battle. Give me a second. If the battle was fought in the same space as a Rancheria, the band that fought is returned to the Rancheria's resource box. That band remains in whatever state it was, whether it's finished or unfinished, and retains possession of all the counters it was equipped with in step 1 of the battle until the operation cleanup phase, which is going to happen right now. All right, I just wanted to double check that. So all of this will then come out and go back. It remains unfinished. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, we're good. I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out the raid counter. Goes, I believe, back to the inactive, but let me double check. All right, I know Paul's not here anymore, but who is it? I need help. What happens to the counter, the raid counter? I cannot remember. Mike, if you're there, the raid counter that is, I cannot remember what happens to this raid counter. I don't know if it goes to the out of play. I think it goes to the inactive, I think, but it doesn't call it out, and I'm not seeing it. Goes to operate. Does it? It doesn't call it out. I apologize that I can't figure this out. Look in the here. Okay, the war ends. It's returned to the topmost empty space of the column on its column of the enemy instruction display. Okay, so check that. From the playbook, when this happens, it doesn't go there. It goes to the empty highest spot on here. So it goes there. There we go. Got it. We're good. That, by the way, is on page 21 of the playbook. Under step 4 of the battle. The raid counter is returned to the topmost empty space on its column of the enemy instruction display. In this case, to the space immediately below the ally 3, as it were, in the playbook on the Norse column of the enemy. Yep, there we go. All right, cool. We're good. All right. So now that that's done, the war column phase is done. So now we go here. The war column has been removed from the board. So there are no war columns out there. That's a really good thing for us. But we have one finished. However, we're not going to be here in a minute. So I think we will go ahead and take action. All of these get to their finished side. Unfinished side, sorry. And it's important to note, this is really, really important. You're fine, Diego. You're good. You're good. All of this stuff that I have here stays with that. That's an important point. So I'm going to choose this one and this. We'll go there. And I'm going to go ahead and choose the horses to come with this one. That will come out. It's going to be 5 movement points, which I forgot to reset earlier. And that's going to be 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, or do we go here? You're good, Mike. Don't worry about it. 1, 2, 3. Leaving us with 2. We could spend the horse and get the bison, right? Do we care? I don't think so. But I think we keep the horse, though. So we're going to go ahead and go 1 movement, 2 movement, 3 movement, and stop. That leaves us with 2 actions. But we need 3 to hunt the bison, and I don't want to spend the horse for the bison, I don't think. Or do I? I don't think it matters. Does it? For population, I guess it does. I can't remember, so whichever makes more sense, I will have done. So I will either spend the horse to get a +3, which now means we now have a bison with that, or I will have left that, and you understand what I'm saying. So that's done. He's going to stay out here because that's hopefully going to become a rancheria for us. And that is all the movement points for that. The other one is not going to do anything. It's just going to hang out, and hopefully we win real quick. You're right. Never move the operation. Was that last turn? Did I forget to do that? No, we're still here. I don't think we move it down there yet. I don't think so. I apologize. So we're done with our actions. So stacking rules, we're okay. We can be where there is bison. That's okay. And obviously that's all that there is. And now this can relinquish all of this stuff back to the rancheria. Okay. There is no finished bands here in the rancheria. So step 2 is roll a die for each rancheria with a finished band. And then the enemy gets to do a free instruction. We didn't use that. And the one that's out here, which is finished, that should flip, by the way. That is not a part of the rancheria, so it does not apply to that, so we don't do step 2. Okay, this is the 3rd turn. Okay. So we should have rolled for that. And it's not 3 or less, so nothing. We'll move on. All right, good. Whew, that could have messed things up. And now we're going to draw from the cup for the operation cleanup, which is actually right here for drawing. A success marker would be great because that means they don't get any actions this turn. All right, well, they get 2 enemy action points to go with their 1 over here, which now means we go through all the normal steps. We will roll based on enemy instruction table. So here, 6 would be great. 5's not terrible. So the west. So this one is going to come into play. So we will go there, and now we're going to roll again to see which one flips. 3 flips. And we have 2 enemy action points, +1 for a total of 3. That 3 is going to be a subjugate. Subjugate is going to, per that up there, no effect, and there's no, there are no ravage markers, so nothing happens. So good news. These 2 will go away. That one gets spent back down to 0. That's good. This one goes over to there. These lift up, and that will come back down to there, and done. By the way, the culture attacks our culture. We lose 1 or 2 culture when that activates, but hopefully we don't get to see that. That'd be great. Okay. Okay. So now, because I forgot this apparently last turn too. Go to step 6. Done. Done. A moment. Sorry, I'm losing my... Total brain cramp. Give me a second, y'all. I apologize. There it is. That's what I... Let me back up. Before we did the cleanup phase, I apologize. Whew. Right. It's here at the end of the take action step. That's what I'm missing. Is roll a die. If the result is equal to or less than the number of the operations counter, then we have to go down, then we do this. We rolled, there wasn't that. So instead, this will drop down again. That's what it is. Whew. I couldn't find where it is. It's when you take the actions. I apologize. Okay. So now we go back to the war column phase. Discard the card from the war event box. If no war column, terminate this procedure. There are no war columns. We're done. We go into here. So now we will go ahead and do a planning step or operation. Yeah. Okay. So here's the first time we're doing planning. Okay. So here we go. Each Mihimiyama with 1 or more success on their medicine track gains a medicine +1. So, Mihimiyama here, obviously there are no other rancherias. So that is there 1 or more? Yes. Gets a +1. Then select a rancheria in play, with the in play Mihimiyama. In other words, hasn't died, is not at 0. In play, that one's right there. We're good. With 1 or more successes on their medicine track. So we're going to choose this one here. Transfer 1 success from the Mihimiyama to the Parebo's medicine track within the same rancheria. So you know what? There. That's better. So one of these will drop down to the Parebo. If there are any successes that remain on the Mihimiyama's medicine track, medicine +1, and then take one of the successes to the operation track with the fewest successes. So what does that mean? That means this bumps up 1, and one of these then will come over to the ops track, okay? And the ops track, we can put it on any space out here. We'll go ahead and put it right there because when that comes down, that is now going to go back into the cup. Then repeat that step if there are any success counters on the Mihimiyama track. So transfer 1 to the Parebo. 1 comes down here. Then, if there are any that are left in the Mihimiyama's medicine track, get a +1. Done. And then this one will then come back out to the ops track. Now, what it cannot do is it has to go on ones that have the least. So it's our choice. It could be any of those up there. So we'll go ahead and put it up there. Okay. There we go. Repeat it until there are no success counters remaining on any Mihimiyama's medicine track. There are none left. We're done with step 2. In step 3, in each rancheria with 1 or more success on the Parebo's medicine track, increase the Parebo's medicine 1 per success on that track. There are 2 successes, 1, 2. And now you're going to notice we could have up to 4 bands here, right? Okay. Then transfer all of his successes to the out of play box. So these 2 will then come down here to the out of play box. Okay. Okay. And now we get to gamble, or push your luck if you prefer. Okay. Each in-play Rancheria's Parebo may either conduct 1 headman action or attempt to take more than 1 headman action. We have to decide. So obviously we only have 1 Rancheria in play, so we're only talking about this one right here. So we could either get 1 headman action, period, for sure we get 1, or we can roll a die. If the result is less than or equal to the Parebo's medicine, so in other words, if we roll a 4 or less, we get to take a number of headman actions equal to the die roll. So, provided we roll a 4, 3, or 2, that means we would get 4, 3, or 2 headman actions. I'm going to go over what those are before we decide. If the result's greater than the Parebo's medicine, the Parebo does not get to take a headman action. That would suck. However, we do have trade goods. A moment on the trade goods. And I want to see if we can use rerolls for those. I believe we can. Yep, we can. So, we're probably going to roll. But what are the headman actions? There are 4 options that we can do. If the medicine is 2 or higher, Parebo goes down 1 medicine, and we gain an action point. So earlier, folks had asked, how do you do so? As long as that's at 2 or higher, we can drop that down, and we gain an action point. That's great. Okay. Okay, so that's 1 action. A second one is we can spend action points to buy a face-up development card. Oh, okay. So the development cards, say the Ute Alliance one, that'd be good to buy, and it costs 1 action point. We have 1 action point, so that's good because that then allows us to remove this in case the ally goes away. Although you can't do that during the passage of time. So there's that. We could just try and remove the tribe. That might not be a bad idea. Anyway, I digress. Third option is to spend 1 action point which we have one of right now, to return a success from the out of play to the draw cup. So that's how these here go back into here, which increase our odds, theoretically at least, to draw more successes. And then finally, our last option is if our culture is greater than our military, which it currently is. Not equal to, but greater than, which it is. Then you can convert a culture into a military point. So those are the 4 options. I think we go ahead and roll. So we need to roll a 4 or less. The higher the number, that is no higher than a 4, would be good. Okay? That'll be a reroll, so we'll get rid of the trade goods. And obviously, once you have declared your rerolling, you have to take the reroll. Yay! So we get 4 actions. That'll do, pig. That'll do. Okay. I would say, since our medicine is at 2 or higher, we will drop this for 1 action. So we have 3 left now to gain an action point. I would then say we spend 1 more here, leaving us with 2 actions, which then gets us 1 more action point. Then as a 3rd action, leaving us with 1 action, I say we go ahead and purchase the Ute Alliance card. So we'll go ahead and purchase this. This will come into our hand. And a reminder, we still have a reroll, I would like to point out. So play from hand and roll a die. A result of 1 or 2, nothing happens. A 3 or 6, we can remove a tribe or settlement from play. I think we keep that in our back pocket for right now. But that's always there for us. We have 1 action left. That cost us an action point because that cost, as it showed, 1 action point. Okay. We can spend an action point if we want to return a success back to the cup. I don't think we do. I think the idea of leaving 2 out there, probably a good idea. So I would argue we waste the last action. If culture is greater than military, we could convert a culture into a military point. We could. Do we want to? I don't think we do. I think I don't mean to critique, but right here, if medicine, where is it? There we go. Nope, let's try it this way. If medicine is at 2 or higher, Parebo medicine goes down 1, and then you gain an action point. So I would argue that we do. Okay? I think we keep it as is, so we waste the last 1. I'm okay with that. All right, so now we go into step 5. Roll a die for each Mihimiyama of each in-play rancheria with a medicine rating of 0. That Mihimiyama is not at 0, okay? And have the result, basically this is how a new Mihimiyama comes into play if one had died through a battle loss, or if he had died in battle, or the rancheria had died, had been destroyed. Step 6, all finished band strength reduced by 1 and marked as unfinished. So that 2 becomes a 1. Or is that only in the Rancheria? No, it says all finished bands. So, and it becomes unfinished there. The player may move up all in-play Rancheria counters. Number of spaces equal to the sum total strength of bands in the resource box. So in other words, that Rancheria can physically move. It's like a migration if we want to do so. We have a 2 strength, so it could move 2. It can pass through piece spaces, stop in the same space as a band, absorb the band, can't drop off bands. You know what? I think it might not be a bad idea to move here. So we're going to move that just to move it one step further away if something like that happens again. I think it's a good idea. I think. Hey, Alyssa. In step 8, the enemy executes 1 free instruction per B right here. Hi. So B, all right? Roll a die, compare. So we're going to figure out what the active enemy is. It's going to be 3. Let me get it back down. 3 is going to be the west, so it's going to be this one. So that will activate. And then we're going to figure out which one flips. It's going to be 6. Flips from a subjugate to war. Execute the topmost instruction for free, which is going to be a culture. All right? Culture action. So a moment with that. So the culture attack. There are no ravage counters out there, so nothing happens with that. Step 2 is the player loses 1 culture point and loses an additional culture point for every settlement belonging to the active enemy. Active enemy being the west. There are no yellow settlements out here, so the culture will drop down to there. So we lose 1 culture point there. If there was another active settlement, a yellow one, it would drop to another spot. Okay? So that is the culture action. That will go there. These will bump up. That will come around just like normal. Done. So we're still on the planning. I apologize. That's, again, this is where this comes in handy. Like, where was I? I kind of froze for a moment, trying to remember where I was. So that was step 8. Enemy executes 1 free instruction. Now we go to step 9. Step 9 is roll a die. If the result is less than or equal to the ops, okay? So, the ops track. A 4 or lower, we then do a passage of time. Okay? So, honestly, I want this to happen. So, we would like a low number. That is lower. So, now operations will go down to the must do a passage of time. And then go into the operation cleanup phase. A moment while we get to that. Operation cleanup phase, this stuff that we've been doing. Right, so to be clear, sorry, another little brain cramp right there, okay? So now, when we get to player operations, so right now we are here in the cleanup phase. When it comes back around, we do a war column phase. There are no war columns, so that won't happen. We will not do take action. We will not do culture. We will not do planning. We must do passage of time. And hopefully at that point, we win. but as it is, we are now in the cleanup phase. Stacking rules apply. Stacking, we're fine. There's one here, we're good. Everything else is fine. All the resource counters would unstack from there, we're fine. Wherever the operations, I guess technically I would have put that there. I didn't think I could. I could have put that there. Return all success counters from the same space as the operation counter to the draw cup. So this one that I had placed up there, that would actually go back into the cup. That's good. Okay. All right. There is no finish bands, so we skip that step. We don't roll any dice for the free instruction. Draw and reveal a counter. Hopefully it's a success. It's not. It's 2 enemy action points. They have none of them banked. So then we will go through the normal steps. So we need to roll to see which enemy is going to come into play. It's going to be 4. 4 is going to be the west. The west is going to be this one. Then we need to roll to see which one flips. That is 6. So culture, attack to a peace action. And now there are 2 enemy action points. They have 0 banked. So now it requires 4. It doesn't happen. This goes back into the cup. They bank 2 enemy action points right there. There's a party at 2, apparently. Not to be confused with a party of 2. They are out of actions. That's it for the cleanup. We now go to the warband. Discard a card if there was one. There isn't. If not, terminate the procedure. Cool. Now we go into passage of time. This is a 15-step process now. Okay? Get comfy. A moment. I'll be right back. All right. Let's do this. Passage of time. Mark all in-play bands as unfinished. Well, we only have 2. We have that one, and we have that one. We've already marked them as unfinished. Okay? Step 2. Player can spend resource counters from in-play rancherias in order to create new band counters. Okay, so let's take a look at our rancheria. We only have 1 currently in play. So let's look there. The only resources we have are a food, which is 2 resource points. The cost to create new band counters is the population points, which are 2 for the food, that's what that yellow 2 is 1 plus the number of new bands already created in the same turn. Well, we haven't created any. So it will cost 1 to create a new 1 strength. They always come in as a 1 strength. If we want to do so, and I think we will. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend 1 resource point here. So I'm just going to flip that over to kind of signify that we spent 1 resource point. And we now have 1 more band at a level 1. Then, the player can spend resource counters from any in-play bands and or rancherias in order to increase the strength of band counters. Each population point spent increases the strength of a band by 1. Okay, so I have 1 resource point left, or 1 population point, so that's going to discard the food. And now I could either turn the 2 to a 3 or the 1 to a 2. I think I'll turn the 1 to a 2. There. Done. But then, we also have this. We have 1 population point. So we're going to turn the 1 into a 2. And we claim that bison, remember, in lieu of our horse. So there's that. I believe that's the right thing to do in this case. Because hopefully this triggers the end of the game here momentarily. Okay? Okay. Step 4. And this is the big one. Player may place 1 new rancheria in a space occupied by a lone band. Remove the band and place it, along with any resources and Mihimiyama counter stacked with it, into the new rancheria's resource box. The new rancheria is given a Parebo medicine rating equal to the new rancheria's band strength, which in that case is going to be 2. If there is a Mihimiyama counter in that space, there isn't, so we don't need to worry about that. If the new rancheria does not have a Mihimiyama counter yet, place its affiliated one on it, whatever. But let's a moment. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So B is going to come out and replace that. That is going to come over here to B. But now we have these 3 markers. The medicine, the Parebo, goes to equal to what the band is. But the medicine there, we don't have 1 yet. So he comes in as a 0. I guess technically is dead, but it's a new, we have to elect a new leader. A new leader has to be resourced from the current rancheria that just developed. Okay. Now, step 5. The player may voluntarily retire any Mihimiyama with medicine greater than 1 in order to transfer his medicine to his rancheria's Parebo. Now this goes for A and B, and C, D, E if there were. Set the Parebo's medicine equal to the retired Mihimiyama's medicine, then reduce the retired Mihimiyama's medicine rating to 0, i.e. there's going to be a new one. And you know what? I think we will. So we're going to retire this one. He becomes the local chief here, and there's going to be a new one that gets elected. And now step 6. For the headman death check. Roll a die for each in play, excepting those in which the Mihimiyama retired in step 5. Okay, so in other words, he just retired, so he's not going to check for a death check. If the die roll is greater than the headman's medicine, no effect. So this just came into play, so we're going to skip the death check. Okay? Roll a die for each Mihimiyama of each in-play rancheria with a medicine rating of 0, and then halve the result. In other words, divide it by 2 to a minimum of 1, and those will become the new ratings. So in this case, we'll go top, then here. Okay? Divide that by 2, so that's going to be a 1. And then we'll go here. That'll be 4 divided by 2. They're done. So there's the new Mihimiyamas. That's step 7. Step 8. Return all success counters from the out-of-play box, the operations track, and medicine tracks to the draw cup. From the out-of-play box, there, all 3 of those, in. Anything that was there, and the operations track. Done. Step 9. All resource counters on the operation track are transferred to the resources box of any in-play rancherias. There are none. Step 10. Every tribe out here, so tribes, right, with at least one ravage marker is removed from the board. There are none. However, -1 military point if there are no tribe settlements removed in that step. In other words, we've done a poor job militarily. Wrong one, I apologize. We're going to lose a military point because we didn't remove any tribes during the passage of time. We've done a poor job militarily. Okay? And now is the biggest part of the game. Step 11. Roll a die for each peace ally counter on a map space. If the die roll is greater than the number on there, it gets removed. We'll start with this one. We need a 5 or less, please. That is a 5 or less. It does not get removed. Now we will roll this one. If it's a 3 or less, it does not get removed. It is a 3 or less, it does not get removed. Those remain allies. And if they were removed, they would move into the topmost spaces available, etc., etc. Step 12. Randomly select a territory. Place one available bison into any empty space in that territory, and it's our choice. So we'll roll 1 through 6. That's 4. 4 is going to be the Red River. Not empty. So none empty there. If there are no empty spaces, remove a bison counter from a space in that territory and place it into any empty space on the map. So that one gets removed. I say we place it right there. That works. Repeat this step for every empty development card space. There's one. So we'll roll. See what territory. Territory 6 is going to be Rio Grande. There are no empty, so we'll remove a bison and we'll put it over here into the Red River. That's fine. Now, step 13. Okay, sorry. Discard all the cards in the development spaces. Resolve all if discarded effects. Draw and reveal new development cards one at a time. And any when revealed effect on each card as it's revealed. So those go away. And here we go. When revealed, target one in-play rancheria. Reduce the strength of all of its bands in targeted rancheria resource box by 1. Discard this card. Do not draw another. So, 1 to 3 will be the top one. 4 to 6 would be the bottom. 1 to 3, so that becomes a 1. Strength. Done. Discard the card, don't fill that spot. Done. When revealed, conduct step 12 at the passage of time. Step 12 is placing bison. That is section 4. There are no empty. We'll take this, go ahead and move it up to there. Done. It was a mild winter. And finally, when revealed, target one in-play rancheria. Reduce the strength of all bands. Discard the card. Do not draw another in its place. Right, same thing, 1 through 3. So this one, both of these drop down to 1s. Done and done. Step 14. Player can purchase a culture card. Culture cards are all of these. Step 15, place the operation on the start space. That moves up. Passage of time drops down. This will go into the cup. If the passage of time is in a numbered space, roll a die, and then do a victory point check. And I'll be honest, I'm going to call it at that point. So technically that is 1/3. But now you see how this goes. I think that's okay. Because it's been 3 hours. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Okay? So technically, okay, step 15. Place the operation on the start space. If the passage of time is in a numbered space, then we would roll. If we roll when this gets down here, if we roll a 3 or less, 4 or less, 5 or less, then you do a passage of time, then terminate and do a victory point check. Otherwise, advance the passage of time 1 space and then go into Operation Cleanup. I think that's a good spot to leave it, okay? Technically, yes, that's 1/3 of that scenario, but if we had checked things right now, we would have won. But the things to keep in mind are we control this because that's an ally, and we have one that is out here in a separate area. That's good. We're safe. We're good. So we have met the victory condition. However, that could become not an ally. We could lose rancherias. We don't have a whole lot of bands out here, etc. Okay? So, yeah. And, right. And Nate says, I think at this point it's just the question of whether you can survive through like 15 more operations. That's the point. And next turns are fast because you don't have to reread each rule every time. Right. But I think that does it justice. I think that's okay. All right, so some thoughts here on this. I think it's fantastic. I think I looked at the rule book like 2, maybe 3 times, and this is my first true playthrough of the game. That just goes to show how good the player aids are in Comancheria. I think the setting and the theme is here. I think the longer the game goes, keep in mind that's still only one of the, and I'll show you all this. So, provided that you succeed at that in the scenario, you then go into this one. You have to control 2 territories and have a rancheria in a 3rd, right? And then, provided you want to keep going, when you do another victory check, number of in-play rancherias must be greater than the number of in-play settlements. In-play settlements are from these bad guys out here. And then each Comanche-controlled territory counts as 1 rancheria. A controlled territory is, again, no baddies in a given area. And if you really want to go for the whole kit and caboodle, you then go into this one. And right there is no premature ending on that, as you can see. And see the scenario victory conditions. I don't know what that is. I've never looked at that because doing the whole kit and caboodle is... All right, here we go. There are 3. There's a major player victory, military points equal to or greater than twice the number of rancherias in the reservation, which we didn't even mess with the reservation. And then if greater than the number of rancherias in the reservation, and then a minor player defeat if less than or equal to the number of rancherias in the reservation. So the game's as big as you want it to be. And obviously there's a fair bit of randomness. You have a ton of die rolls. You have the checks, the success draws, or not success draws, as it were. You have the development deck. I didn't even really talk about the culture clubs. Karma Chameleon. Anyway, the culture cards, as it were. And there are a whole bunch of rule breakers out there, but the important thing to remember, now I mentioned this earlier, but I haven't since, is for these to be active, you have to have equal to or greater that number of culture points to even have it be active. And they do a ton of different cool things. I don't want to go through all, 24 cards, but you get the idea. Yeah, culture is very, very important. As the game goes on, it becomes harder and harder to maintain, I imagine. But yeah, I thought this was really, really good. And it's extraordinarily procedural, as I prefaced at the very beginning. Y'all saw that. I walked through every step using the player aids, referenced the rule book a couple times, but overall, I think it flows pretty well. And as you get more and more familiar with it, I think that the game is, you're not going to need to step through it as much. It'll be boom, 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 boom. So there you go. That is Comancheria, designed by Joel Toppen. So well done, Joel. Well done, GMT. Yeah, I thought this was really, really good. I think this is compelling. I think it's interesting. And I got to be honest, well, of course, but I think the enemy instruction display, the way this changes and the way this varies, is really clever. The way it works with that. So there you go. There we go. All right. All right. So that's it. That's all I got. That is Comancheria. So if y'all enjoyed it, I certainly would appreciate subscription. Subscribe down below. Give it a thumb if you are so inclined. If you think it's worth supporting the show, you can go to patreon.com/HCHQ. That's it. The weekly look ahead is going to be on Tuesday. We're going to be recording the podcast on Tuesday as well. Tomorrow's going to be some behind the scenes stuff. And more content coming this week. So leave it at that. All right. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. I definitely appreciate all the help from the Peanut Gallery. Y'all were invaluable in this. Hopefully you found it valuable. Hopefully you found it useful, if nothing else. All right. So there you go. All right. Y'all have a great night. Social distance. Be kind to one another. And wear your masks. And I'll see y'all hopefully this week. All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks. Phew. That was long, but I think it showed okay. So I hope so.